Through the magic of the heart, we will continue to find ourselves. Aloha, shifters, light guardians, dreamers within this beautiful holographic matrix. Welcome back once again for another inspirational team podcast presented here on behalf of Paradigm Shift Central, a portal for inspirational conscious media and creators and leaders. Thank you so much for joining in with us once again. Tonight's topic is going to be a very special one, a very heartfelt one definitely in theme with Cancer season. Tonight's topic is going to be about the spiritual lessons of relationships and love. So thank you again, everyone, so much for joining in. And of course, I am joined here by some fellow amazing creators, some fellow amazing shifters. So fellow shifters who are here with us in the broadcast, go ahead and gently unmute your microphones and send some noise out to all the people out there. Send some love. So go ahead, everybody, make some noise, unmute your microphone. Ow, ow, ow. Beautiful. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in on whatever platform you happen to be on, and just making sure everybody's muted there. Perfect. All right. So again, for those of you who are tuned in on YouTube, do me a favor, just drop a quick 1111 on the chat to be able to confirm that you guys can hear us okay. For those of you on Instagram, click the link in my profile to join in on YouTube. For those of you on Facebook, you can join in on YouTube as well. If this is your first time here, a quick introduction. Again, we do these podcasts live every Thursday at 8 p.m. EST. The objective of these podcasts is to be able to practice coming together as a team, to be able to practice having conscious conversations that we don't normally always get a chance to have, to be able to help expanding our consciousness, to be able to help sharing wisdom and experience, to be able to inspire each other as we continue to ripple these waves out, as we continue to cultivate mindfulness and continue to deepen the relationship with the magic of our heart. So like I said, today's broadcast is definitely relevant. It's officially Cancer season. Woohoo! Crab energy, yeah. Being a Cancerian myself, this is something that's obviously, like, I don't know, I get pretty excited about it, I guess. I don't know. It's a great opportunity of the year to be able to like really tap into the feels, to tap into our feelings, to connect with our heart. And so it really was just something where I'm like, okay, what's this broadcast going to be this week? And I knew this was going to be a topic coming up in the near future. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the week that we're going to do it. And I think it's something that's definitely within the collective energies for the for everyone, for the community right now. So thank you again, everyone, for joining in. And so again, what we're going to do, we're going to start off with a little micro meditation, and then we're going to start off into the conversation, and then we'll pass the talking stick around, and then we'll go for about 2 hours. If the audio is a little bit out of sync at the beginning of this broadcast, please forgive us. It will be resolved as we go. And again, quick thank you to our Patreon supporters who help make this broadcast possible. You can see on YouTube on that corner the information for the Patreon goal as well as the link. Our Patreon is a place where you can support the broadcast we do and the bigger project with monthly micro contributions. Plus, when you sign up at the leading member level of $11 a month, you can join on air for our team podcast and have access to our private community space as one of our leading members, as part of our team of conscious creators. So thank you again to our Patreon supporters. And if anybody wants to sign up for the Patreon during this broadcast, we'll be sure to give you a shout out as we roll through it. So thank you again, everyone. Make sure you subscribe and like this video on YouTube, etc., etc. You know what to do. But more importantly, just allow yourself to sit back, relax, open your heart, and whatever comes through this broadcast, may it continue to serve and inspire you. So let's take a moment here to drop into this meditation. So for everybody here, just take a brief moment to be able to just close your eyes. And as you listen to my voice, just begin to bring awareness to your breath. Deep, gentle inhales through the nose, and soft, gentle exhales. Just bringing yourself into the space of gratitude, visualizing all of us right now just sitting in a circle. You can imagine us sitting in a circle inside of a very cute yoga studio or somewhere very sacred. You can imagine us like sitting outside in a field underneath the sun, whatever works. We're just taking a moment here to visualize all the amazing people. As you look around this circle, you see the people who are speaking on the podcast, you see those of us who are tuned in, and just being reminded of the community, of the team that we are building, of the story that we are weaving, supporting each other as sacred mirrors, allowing us to be able to create a sacred space to share our wisdom, to be able to share our hearts. So just take a moment here to express your gratitude to all the amazing people and just feel that gratitude being received in return. And just take a moment here. I'm going to stop talking. Just allow yourself to just breathe in this moment and just be in this place, in this moment of oneness, whatever you want to call it. Just allow yourself to be here now. Go ahead. Beautiful. And as you're in this moment, just go ahead and speak some words of kindness to all the people who are here within your heart. And just allow yourself to receive any messages as well. Beautiful. And gently from here, carrying this vibration with us through the broadcast of family, of camaraderie, of unity. Gently, when you're ready, open up your eyes and return your awareness to the beautiful space around you. Awesome. Sweet. All right. So with that said, let's get right into this discussion. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. As we start off, I just want to give a huge shout out and special note to the people who are joining us here today on this broadcast. We have myself, Brendon, aka Mystic Spider-Man on TikTok and Instagram. We've got Rachel. We have Kris. You guys, I guess you guys can like wave, sure. It's like do hello, do some like queen waves. We got Rachel. We got Kris. We got Camila, one of our newer leading members. We have Ashley. We have Dani. We have Carly, and we have Kristen, and we also have Erica. So for any of the creators that are here on the broadcast, any of the fellow leading members, you'll be able to connect with them further through the information in the YouTube notes. So keep an eye open for that, and also you can find their links as they post them into the YouTube chat. So for everybody here, if you guys are ready to get into this broadcast, drop another 1111 in the chat, and please feel free to add your comments as we go. You are part of this discussion for those of you in the YouTube chat, and please feel free to like invite your friends. If you guys want, you guys can like simultaneously go live on other platforms and post the YouTube link in your profile. You can do whatever you feel called to do to be able to help invite more people in. And thank you again, everyone, for being a part of this team. So as we move into this, again, what is our intention? Our intention is really to be able to share the wisdom that we have acquired, that we have collectively gained. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about being a human, is that there's a lot of things that, you know, you can learn about, you can read about, you can watch documentaries about, but I think when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships, the deepest and most meaningful way to learn is by living, is to go through it. And so moving into this discussion, again, you know, the spiritual lessons of relationships and love. We're going to be talking about relationships in a variety of forms. You know, this can be relationships that can be both romantic, they can be platonic, but within this dynamic, it's going to give us an opportunity to share, you know, what have been the things that we have learned? What have been the things that have even sort of been, you know, things that might have been challenging for us? What have been the things that have been the most exciting for us? So I'll just start off first. And again, this is purely just practice. That is the intention of this synergy circle, is really to just be able to practice. There's very few notes written ahead of time. So from my heart, I will say that a lot of my lessons have been learned as a result of relationships that I've been through, specifically romantic relationships, which, all things considered, for me hasn't really been a heck of a lot. Like, I didn't really officially like start, like, I didn't have my first like official relationship probably until I was like 21, 22. But without needing to get into details, I can say that for me, some of my like most powerful transformational growth has been as a result of like ending relationships and the breakup of relationships, and then the learning process of being able to heal myself and transform myself into that next stage of who I am. And at the same time, being in relationships has always been something that I've just been so blessed with, like in the sense that what I love about relationships, and I'll just speak on this briefly and then we'll pass the talk and stick around, is that when you are in relationships, especially again, kind of like the romantic relationships, what I love is kind of like having that mirror for you to be able to see more of yourself through. And I think that's the beauty of what relationships do. Because when you're by yourself, you get to know yourself, you get to see who you are. But until you have that other person, there's certain parts of yourself that you don't really get to see. Because it's in those little moments that you get to see how you respond without even overthinking, you know? And that's the thing that I love. I guess like I'm just kind of like a romantic person at heart, but with like any of my partners, my girlfriends in the past and everything like that, it's always been kind of like those little moments where like without even planning anything, like something just really genuine would come through me. Like I would say something really meaningful, or it would be those moments where we're just like sitting in a really like intimate place and we're really just connecting and it's this heart to heart expression. And then after it happens, I look back and I'm like, whoa, like I'm really proud of how I showed up there. Like I'm almost like it almost like surprises me. It's like, whoa, like who was that? Like, but it was me. It was me. And it was literally just me being myself. So again, I think relationships teach us a lot. They teach us about how to be able to support people in a variety of forms, and we can talk a lot about that. We can talk a lot about. I'll just set things up. We can talk a lot from my understanding of what like true love is or deep love, and I'll talk more about that later. We can talk a little bit about the dynamics of like the twin flame soulmate. We can just kind of like help demystify that, because I know that's a topic a lot of people are interested in. And again, you know, just hitting upon this last thing here, and then we'll pass the talking stick around. For me, being in a relationship has always been a spiritual experience. And it's not just because of the things that are easy, but it's actually because of the things that are challenging. Because when you're in a relationship, it really puts you into this place where it gives you the opportunity to really consciously reflect on what it is that you're moving towards. What are you creating? What do you want out of this? And not just what do you want out of this, but what do you want to co-create with that person? What do you want to give? And so for me, I think that through the lessons of relationships and love, it has helped me understand how to be able to support in a variety of ways that are very, very humbling. And it has helped me dissolve my ego. It has helped me move through blockages of like jealousy and like resentment and things like that. And again, it's inspired me. It's called me into a better version of myself simply by wanting the best for my partners. So, obviously, a lot to talk about, but of course, we'll pass the talking stick around. And again, from here, I just want to be able to invite you guys to literally just kind of talk on the specifics of the topic. What have been some of the lessons, some of the spiritual lessons that you have learned through relationships and love? So who would like to go first? Go ahead and just gently put your hand up like this, and I will pass it over to whoever would like to go next. And I know Rachel and Kris, if you guys even want to go next, they actually had a discussion earlier on Tuesday in the week, and it was another discussion that they had facilitated through a Zoom meeting called Conscious Conversations. And they can tell you a bit about this. And it was kind of cool because synchronistically, Kris and I were talking about this. Like, neither of us planned this, but we both had the discussion topic like planned ahead of time, and we're like, what? Like, we're doing, like, their topic was literally about healthy relationships. So we both kind of had this collective hive mind thing that we were tapped into. So if one of you guys wants to go first, or even just kind of passing it back to the two of us, I'd love to kind of hear what came through from that. But at the same time, even just starting off, you know, from your own experience, what have been some of the lessons that you have learned as a result of relationships and love? So if one of you wants to go first, just put your hand up and I'll pass it over to you, and then we'll keep passing the talking stick around. So who would like to go first? If Kris or Rachel? Kris? Sure. Yeah, Kris. Okay, cool. All right, Kris, go right ahead, dude. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. Like, it's always such a pleasure to be a part of these synergy circle discussions, like, with so many other really beautiful people, and like, hearing what everyone else has to say about, whatever topic it is that we're discussing for the week. And yeah, like, going into kind of going off of what you were saying at first, with just like the idea that we both kind of came up with like a similar topic for what the discussion would be about for each of our respective kind of mine being like the conscious conversation, just what I chose to name like the coming together on Zoom and stuff like that, and, your synergy circle discussion, like being like all about kind of like like healthy relationships, like in one way or another, or just kind of about relationship dynamics. And yeah, the title of mine was it was like healthy relationship dynamics. So like, I went and I printed out like a lot of things that was just getting into the idea of relationship dynamics as a whole. And it was and so even before I go into that though, like it's like I feel like, just the fact that like, I was like called into doing the topic on relationship dynamics, like, like it is like you were saying, like that hive mind kind of thing, but also just like, yeah, like really asking kind of like, what is needed, like right now, or like, like what has been coming up for me within my life, and yeah, like what do I feel called to kind of make the topic about, and like what can be really helpful for people, like, like right now, especially I feel like when we may be dealing with sometimes like, some uncomfortable relationship dynamics with the current situation, living situation that we are within, or like really feeling the tension from whatever, like a romantic relationship that we may be within. And I guess that was kind of something that came up in the topic of in my like discussion, was all about how, like relationships are like everywhere all around us, and that it's not just like, like romantic relationships, but really like, it's like oftentimes like the relationship dynamic that we have with our parents really comes into like shaping, how we show up in romantic relationships, and like, how what we seek within other people, because maybe we didn't get as a child, like, so maybe we seek that kind of validation or approval, or like alternatively, like, yeah, like, we tried to have power over other people in relationships and stuff like that. So a lot of things that came up, like, within the conversation were, just like ideas of, like conditional love versus, unconditional love, and you know uh like, having expectations versus, like no expectations, and like the need to control like the other person versus like, having like the trust. And yeah, just like a lot of different things. Yeah, and like, secrecy versus, the honesty and openness, which like, is really like a touchstone to a healthy relationship dynamic. And I'm like reading from this chart, so yeah, like I like sent you earlier on in the day today, there was this like really beautiful chart that like we kind of were referring to over the course of our discussion, which like had to do with like the difference between like 3D relationships, or like, and 4D relationships, and just kind of this idea that like, one coming from this place of maybe like separation versus the other one, being all about like, integration, everything and everyone being connected, and like that being the dynamic between, like maybe the relationship being one of secrecy versus this like total honesty and openness. And it was just like really cool to look at, the different dynamics between kind of like, like just like what it speaks about. So like, for example, like, with the relationship of kind of that can be one of secrecy, like withholding information from my partner and from myself. Like with secrecy, my partner never gets to know who I truly am, and it keeps me separated from the greater portion of myself as well. Versus like total honesty with my partner. With honesty, my partner gets to know who I truly am, and it means like, honesty means being 100% who I truly am, and it's not like withholding a comment or information just to avoid hurting the partner or to control the relationship. So like, it's to um, I can never really know or predict what will hurt another or how they will react to my honesty. Therefore, I should stop assuming responsibility for the other person's emotions, growth, and reactions to my honest, non-manipulative communication. So I know I'm throwing a lot into the discussion, but it's just kind of like, like this idea of like, kind of entering into relationships not with the idea of wanting to control the other person, but or feel as though the other person is the one who is making you feel complete. And I think that definitely plays into a lot of the topics that you were talking about too, with twin flames and everything, and how I feel like sometimes like there's this misconception all about how we um or it's like kind of a lack of feeling as though we are complete and whole in of ourselves, and that other person is kind of like also a whole and complete person, that is not completing us, but it's just like, like being able to but add to like whatever it is that you already are. So it's just kind of like I feel like, like it's that idea that, it's kind of like this is like my other half, and that like, I need someone else, versus like, like I am able to like satisfy and fulfill my own needs for happiness by myself. And it's kind of like, it's not looking for that within the other person, but like, seeing that like, like we can be whole and complete ourselves without having that other person, because that creates these relationships of codependency where we feel like we need someone outside of ourselves to make ourselves happy and stuff, versus like that person just kind of adding to the happiness that we already have and that we have already cultivated within ourselves, in that state of balance that we can cultivate within ourselves. So yeah, I know I just like threw a lot of things onto the table, but yeah, there was so many things discussed within the conversation that like it's so awesome. I feel like, like I can bring some of that like knowledge that came up to the surface within that to this conversation. So yeah, I feel like I'm not gonna. I feel like I can at some point reflect more upon maybe some specific examples of relationship kind of dynamics within how it's playing out in my life. But I think for right now, I just wanted to address some of the things that came up in the conversation. So yeah, with
Awesome.
that being said, let's pass the talking stick back.
Awesome. Thanks, Kris. Yeah, that's a good recap. So again, it's like two discussions just kind of like synergize into one, and now we'll keep building off that. Rachel, like, if you did you want to go next, Rachel, or do you want to wait? You can wait, Rachel. It's up to you. Uh, well, let's just check if anybody else is ready to kind of jump in, because again, like, I think just I'll just talk here for a minute, but somebody else just go ahead and put their fingers up and let me know if you're ready to go next. Again, part of the intention behind this broadcast and this discussion is to encourage healthy awareness, healthy perspectives on relationships. And absolutely, I think relationships are one of the things that like teach us how to grow the most. And sometimes they're like incredibly raw and incredibly real and incredibly triggering. And these relationships are sacred mirrors, and they will show us parts of ourselves perhaps where we need to send more love, right? And I kind of talked about this in a TikTok video, and I know even a few of you have also talked about this in other similar videos, where again, your relationship is basically a reflection of where you are at. And I think that's kind of the thing with relationships is like, you'll receive what you need, not necessarily it would always be what you want. And I'm sure people kind of have this experience in their own way, where they might kind of go through a relationship and it may be kind of like exciting and everything at the start, and they're kind of drawn in and there's that kind of gravitational pull, but then as they go, things start coming to the surface and there's like this isn't sitting well, this isn't what I want. And then at that point, it's a great time to get curious, and I think that's what relationships are really great for. They're great for kind of like asking questions and just really getting clear on yourself, and really just allowing yourself to be like honest about what it is that you value in a relationship, like in a way that's obviously not putting unrealistic expectations on a thing while still honoring the person for where they are at, because I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things with relationships is understanding that it's being able to love the person for who they are, not who you want them to be. And I think that's where sometimes relationships will struggle. They'll just be like, oh, like, again, this is where I feel a lot of people, when they kind of go into relationships, they have, especially when we're younger, we've kind of been trained into this conditioning and this mentality that you go into the relationship in order to be able to like specifically get something from it. And not to say you don't get something from it, but if your whole approach to the relationship is like, what am I getting out of this? What do I receiving? What do I get? Sort of thing. How is the partner meeting my needs? That in itself can kind of lead to an unhealthy dynamic. Whereas again, I think from my experience, it's really, really powerful when you can reach that degree of maturity to show up in a relationship, to be able to kind of like approach it from like, what can I give? How can I give to this person? How can I support them? And this is where you get into, is like, if everybody's seen that picture, it's like, two people with like flowers growing out of their head and they're like watering each other's heads. And it's like this really cute picture. And that's really what it should be. So again, with relationships, they help us get really clear on what it is that we want. And one of the best pieces of advice that came to me was this idea that every relationship is getting us ready for the next one. And sometimes you'll go through a relationship and as it kind of evolves, things will come to the surface and you'll be like, you know what, like this, I don't like this. Like, and it's okay to say that. Like, it's okay to say that. And I think that's where relationships really teach us to be honest. Because I think sometimes, again, a big part of this discussion is like reprogramming our conditioning that society is kind of ingrained on us, where, people are just kind of like, oh, but like, maybe he's super sexy and he's super cool, so just keep going with it. Like, you'll never get a better one than this. And you're just like, yeah, he's kind of insensitive and he doesn't really listen to me, but he's got a six-pack, so I guess I should. And we start creating these stories within our head, right? But again, I think when we're in a relationship and if we notice something that pushes our button or triggers us, or we're just like, oh, like that didn't sit right with me, as we mature, developing clear communication is so valuable and so important, because if you just let things, if you're just like, oh, you know, that kind of bugged me, but I'm not going to say anything, and then you don't say anything, and then it happens again, and you're just like, oh, I'm not going to say anything, and then it keeps happening, and then over time, you know, what can happen is like there's like this like resentment that's built up and stuff like that, and then eventually things will just, you know, kind of like overflow and everything like that. So that's where I think when it comes to healthy relationships, and again, if our goal is to be able to approach a relationship to create it in the most healthiest dynamic way possible, opposed to just superficial and everything like that, clear communication is so important. But again, that also requires a degree of emotional maturity as well, that sometimes we're not always at. So we kind of have to go through the experience of not clearly communicating in order to be able to understand the importance of clearly communicating. And I'll just say one other thing real quick, and then I'll pass it to whoever. So whoever wants to go next, again, just put your hand up real quick. Ashley, I'll pass it over to you. This was a big lesson for me, and I've talked about this before in a video I made like years and years and years ago. And it's basically this idea that your heart will lead you to where you need to go, not necessarily to happiness. And so this is why a lot of us will go through these experiences where we'll end up finding ourselves in a relationship with someone who doesn't fully complement us, so to speak. In order for us to be able to learn the lessons, in order for us to be able to get clarity on what it is that we do want, and in order for us to at sometimes go through suffering and hurt in order to be able to learn how to become like more resilient and transform ourselves and learn how to send ourselves more love. So that's where, again, I say this idea that like the heart doesn't break, it only breaks open. And so it's like as your heart breaks, you're actually feeling these parts in yourself where you can send more love. And if you really listen to that, again, that's like literally how you evolve as a soul. And then you kind of like get this new degree of this new paradigm of just like, oh, you know what, in my next relationship, being able to communicate emotions is something that I want. Like that's what I value, right? And then if you say that, if you know it, then the universe will be like, okay, good, that's what we needed you to say. We needed you to be ready. And then again, you know, that next relationship will come. And the last thing I'll just say, but not in detail, one of the best ways, and I made a video about this, one of the best ways to manifest like your ideal relationship is literally just to work on yourself. I'll explain this real quick, where basically my understanding, which really makes sense, is think of the way how relationships work, think of it relative to vibration. So when two people are at a similar vibration, they will literally come together. Like they will match a frequency and they will come together. And so again, if your vibration is kind of like one that's kind of like lacking self-confidence and self-worth, and again, this could be a younger version of you, so to speak, then you'll attract someone that will literally echo that back to you, so to speak. And so what happens over time with relationships is that as people evolve through their life, your vibration will change. It literally shifts. It's called growing up, so to speak. And so this is what happens when two people come together because they have a shared frequency, but then eventually a relationship will begin to break up. But I like to think of it as the term breaking through, where basically what's actually happening is that one person in the relationship, or both, they're kind of shifting their frequency, and now it gets to the point where they're not actually on the same frequency and they just don't fully resonate. And it's something that sometimes it's almost kind of beyond words. It's just like, yeah, I don't know, I just don't feel the same spark, pull, whatever it is. Like it's almost beyond words, but you can feel it, right? Because it's like a vibrational thing. And then again, from that point, what would happen if we as a culture were to start to adopt this maturity, where instead of like as the relationship kind of reaches its pinnacle point and then the breakup begins to occur, which again I think of as a breakthrough, what if we were to actually celebrate that? What if like we were to go into a relationship where it's just like, yo, like I've said this to my partners in the past, where it's like, yo, like I care about you, you know, like I love you here in this moment, and like let's dance this dance as long as we're meant to, knowing that it won't last forever. You know, like I'll love you as much as I'm capable of within this moment, and then when the music ends, the dance will end, and we'll just be like, thanks for the dance, and then we'll kind of go off in separate ways and we'll move on to the next partner, so to speak. And so instead of being like, oh no, like the breakup happened, I must have done something wrong, what if the universe was simply doing what it was meant to do, and you literally got to the point where you received the lessons and you were ready to move on to that next stage, and then again, you know, give yourself permission to do so. So passing it over to Ashley. Ashley, go ahead when you're ready, jump right in.
So I just wanted to touch on a few things that you said, and one of them just was the aspect of mirroring and kind of like where you're at in vibrational matching. And I just wanted to relay a short personal story of the one time that I was in a really abusive relationship, which was number one confusing because I felt so much love for this person, but I remember the thought of I was mad at the universe. I was like, I was going through a time where I was in school learning about all the things we're talking about. I went to a healing arts school, and I was like, how could I be in such a transformative place in my life? And how could the universe do this to me? How could I love someone so much that treated me like doo-doo? And the answer was that there was a piece of me that treated myself that way. There was those little whisperings in the night that said I hated myself, said I didn't love myself, and that I wasn't worth it, and all these things. And that was projected out and manifested within my reality. And I just want to make a note that these things, these acts, even though they can be viewed as good and can be viewed as bad, it's all just neutral energy. And it's just like kind of like a fundamental aspect of the universe of this connection of, yeah, vibrational matching. It's not, you know, that you have like these toxicities and you're attracting these toxicities. It can be viewed in that way for growth and learning, but really it's just where you're at and where that meets you. And you can choose whether to do that work to learn to love yourself, learn to grow. And the moment I did do that work, I, ended up innately attracting a partner out of nowhere that loved myself just as much as I did, which is a lot now. And the other thing I wanted to quickly touch on when we were talking about communication is that I think collectively right now, women are kind of specifically going in an upshift of reclaiming their voice, because there's always been this patriarchal dynamic of women being suppressed and not being able to speak for their needs and not being able to speak for their boundaries and what is right and what is wrong. And I'm pretty sure it used to be legal to be able to beat your wives and things like that. So even though we have the opportunity, we have the privilege, at least, maybe not in all parts of the world right now here in America for me, that I have this space to do that. There's still a lot of work and healing and alchemical transformation to be done because we have that in our DNA. We have that intergenerational trauma of not being able to use our voice and not being able to speak up and being constricted in that manner. And I see this manifest in a lot of different ways. There's kind of this like thing with women I see where we kind of expect men to like be mind readers, and that's kind of like an ongoing joke. But I honestly, yeah, you're laughing, it's a thing, but I honestly think an aspect to that is because we don't fully feel comfortable, powerful to speak our needs. So we're being angry, like, why doesn't he know what I want? But like, we also need to do the work and say, hey, this isn't right. Hey, I would really love if you do this. And I see that specifically also sexually a lot in relationships. And this is kind of a TikTok joke of around women and like men not doing all the things they need to do. But again, that's just another area where we're not speaking our boundaries and we're not communicating. And again, that's not a shameful thing to be projected, just a neutral standpoint, understanding like that's where some work we could do, self-love work, so that we all evolve and we all can up level in relationships. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. And again, like even just this I really appreciate everybody being here, because again, this isn't just like, oh, talking about things we already know. Like, this is a chance for us to be able to learn from each other. So I really appreciate again the mixture of divine masculine and feminine energy that we have here and in the YouTube chat as well. But yeah, no, it's really, really powerful. And I think just hitting upon Ashley's notes real quick, and again, somebody put their hand up who's ready to go next, and that way so I can pass over to you. I'll pass over to Carly in a second. So yeah, again, you know, like through relationships, like we, how do I explain this? Oftentimes, you know, like we will go through certain relationships in order to be able to gain the wisdom that will help us heal a wound in the collective, if that makes sense. So sometimes, you know, when we talk about things from this like higher spiritual perspective, we'll talk about this idea where it's like, oh, you know, like nothing happens by accident, everything happens for a reason, sort of things like that. And then you start getting to some things where it's like, well, you know, what about people in abusive relationships, male or female? You know, like why is that their sort of thing, right? But again, you know, like I think there's a deep level to that, where the simple answer is that on a soul level, like we're almost choosing, and I say this relatively speaking with no disrespect, but this is just an idea, but it's almost like on a soul level, we choose to go through those shitty situations in order to be able to get the wisdom to know how to heal it on a collective level. Because it's like by going through it, you know how to be able to not only heal from it, but to also be able to create space and the wisdom to be able to teach others how to be able to not have to go through it again. And I think there is a kind of like this common recurring story absolutely right now, especially with this rise of the divine masculine and feminine happening together, where it's incredibly powerful to see this like breaking of patterns, the shifting of patterns. And that's happening a lot because of women like claiming their power and claiming their collective voice and saying like no more, no more, no more. In the same way, it's kind of like in an individual relationship, you know, it takes a lot of work for a woman to be able to step up and to say things in certain circumstances. But now it's like understanding that the entire collective is almost kind of like coming out of an abusive relationship, so to speak. And so when you think about it, again, you know, this is kind of going back to the perception of twin flames based on a guy named Matt Kahn, who I listened to. He explained this really well. And I'll just explain this real quickly. I'll pass it to Carly, where basically, again, twin flames from one definition, and again, whatever definition works for you, that's fine, and just choose one that's healthy. He basically explains it where twin flames are there to be able to spark your growth. But as soon as the relationship becomes abusive, you have the right to be able to like get out of it. And as soon as you make that choice for yourself, then like that soul contract is like null and void. It like ceases the soul contract, so to speak. And so I think we have to be able to, again, collectively, as individuals, male or female, be able to kind of like see how even the shittiest of situations related to relationships are also, from another perspective, a chance for us to step into our power, to literally be able to use our voice and to say like no more. Like I know my voice, I know my worth, I know my voice, like I'm using my voice, no more. And to be able to do that, not just for ourselves individually, but literally for a collective. So again, you know, we're kind of at this point collectively where we're seeing a lot of the shadow. And why is that happening? Because we have to make the unconscious conscious. And in order to be able to do it on the collective level, a lot of us as soul are quote unquote choosing to do it on the individual level. And the reason why I say this is because I just want to be able to say something that for some of you will just kind of like be like, oh wow, okay, I've never heard that before, where it's really just kind of like acknowledging that those of us who go through shitty situations are going through them because on a soul level we are brave enough to go through them. It's like literally on a soul level, it's just like the universe is like, yo, we need some help, like kind of like healing this trauma, like any volunteers. And on a soul level, it's like, I'll do it. And it's just like, holy shit, like that's incredibly brave. Like that is incredibly powerful. Like no one would, like, just to be able to again see it from this story where it's like on a soul level, you chose to go through this. Not to say it doesn't make it like any less hurtful than what it was, but you choose to move through this. And this is really relative to like any sort of crappy situation that we go through in order to be able to bring consciousness to the unconsciousness, to bring light to the shadow in that sense. So again, I think literally relationships based on love and things like that are a powerful microcosm of the macrocosm. And when we create consciousness within our individual relationships, we are literally healing the collective of all of our relationships with each other. So anyways, if that resonates with you, drop an 1111 in the chat. Let me know. I know that's kind of like an out there idea, and I hope I express it in a way with again, just with consideration, because I know it's a sensitive topic. Carly, I'll pass it over to you, and go ahead and you can just jump in at any point with anything you feel called to say. Carly, thank you for being here. Go right ahead.
Thank you for having me. I related to a lot of what you just said. And Kris, also when you were talking about like how basically we kind of pass on at first what our family has brought us to inherit on some level, you know, through like intergenerational trauma. And for me, like that I definitely like have patterns that I had to overcome as a result of like the way that I was brought up in my family. I was in like I had an alcoholic parent, and like I found like in each relationship I went into, I was dating someone that had like an alcohol or drug problem for like a number of years, and like I kept on trying to save people basically because I wanted to save my family member who I couldn't really help. So it just was, the universe basically was like showing me like, you keep trying to like do this, you keep trying to find somebody to like play this role again because you're not healed from it. And like throughout that process, I also like became somebody I wasn't really, like in my heart and in my soul. Like I was drinking a lot and just kind of like taking on the behaviors of people that I was with, until I finally like woke up after having like a really bad breakup and like relationship for like 2 years. That really like woke me up, and I was like, you like need to stop like being in this cycle of doing this. And then that prompted me to like actually change and like accept that I need to love myself. And that kind of just taught me like, while I was in that relationship towards the end, I kept like having moments of like awakening basically. And then I was able to like leave that relationship. And then like as I was growing and like loving myself and healing, out of nowhere, like the love of my life just entered my life out of nowhere, it seems. And we've been together for 5 years now. And it's wonderful. And yeah, I just think like we have these cycles that some of us go through in order to teach us on a soul level what we really need to heal in ourselves and in our family. And yeah, that's what I have to say for now.
Thank you, Carly, so much for sharing. And absolutely, again, I think just us being able to create this space, I'm sure on many levels, many people are going to talk here tonight, and we're going to like hear each other in our stories. So Carly, I appreciate you sharing and just the vulnerability, and congratulations to you and your partner as well, because again, that kind of echoes this theme where it's like, as you work on yourself, it literally kind of comes to you when you're ready. So that's very, very powerful, Carly. Thank you. We'll keep passing the talking stick around here. Whoever wants to jump in next. Camila, we'll pass it over to you. Camila, when you're ready, go right ahead, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I've been resonating with a lot of the things that you have been saying. I believe I'm a little older than you guys. I've already been divorced. I've been married for 6 years now, and I've been with my partner for 11 in my second marriage. So it's been a really, really, really long road. I started having boyfriends when I was very young, like at 14. I really didn't have a relationship with myself. I didn't know myself. My parents were divorced. My dad used to have a lot of girlfriends. So going off by what Carly said a little bit, I think I was repeating a little bit of what my parents had. And, I was looking for these guys that were very problematic, like they would cheat on me. I was in very abusive relationships. Specifically, I have 4 relationships that were terrible. I wouldn't snap out of it because that's what I kept seeing around me in that time. There were very different times. We as women, I'm from Colombia also, and it's a very um patriarch how do you say that? Patriarchal society. Um, so women were basically martyrs. We would have to, have to take things in silence. We weren't allowed a lot to speak up. I'm not saying that everyone had the same, but this was my particular case. My family was very Catholic. My grandparents had a very like dysfunctional dynamic, and so I kind of grew up with this idea that being a woman meant like having to shut up and take whatever was coming, and just kind of deal with it, but without being very emotional or being vulnerable. Like it was seen as kind of I don't know, weakness or something. And it really took me basically until I met my husband, which was 11 years ago, to actually understand that I needed to be in a place where I knew where I was and like have this relationship with myself first, uh, before being with anybody. Because like if you don't have a relationship with you first, if you don't know what you're, what do you want to do, where your spirit is, like what's your truth, because I was never able to like know what my truth was, because I was always with guys um that like I would become kind of like what they were, or what they were into was what I was into. I was switching from, I'm also a Pisces, so water is very uh malleable, and so it really took me a long time to sit with myself, like after my last really like important relationship, which was about, I don't know, it was around 2007. And after that I was alone for about 6 years, and being alone was what actually helped me find myself. I kind of became a hermit because I had so much stuff to like digest, and understand why I let so many people treat me so bad. And so, because I let it happen and over again, and so it actually made me realize, right, I've been growing up with all these things since I was little. I've been seeing all these behaviors in my society, in my family, and also I just kind of, you know, isolated myself from everybody just to protect myself from getting hurt ever again. And that was also a very unhealthy place to be, because I just kind of got away from everybody. I just started like not talking to my friends or just not going out. I was just afraid of everybody basically. And, I also had abusive relationships with friends when I was little, like being bullied. I dealt with a lot of things that definitely made me, kind of become, you know, I had walls all around me, which in a way was good because it led me to go deeper into myself and see what I actually like, what was my voice, what did I want, um, what would what was I expecting about myself and not what others were expecting from me, and also like learning how to speak up without feeling ashamed. Um, but it took a really long time. So I really admire that you guys being so young are at such a level of maturity, because at your age I was just all over the place, like seriously. My first marriage was when I was 24, and it was a very abusive relationship, not physically but emotionally. It was horrible, and it took me 2 years to get out of it. And actually, I didn't get out of it. He was the one who ended it, and that took me like, I'm still dealing like with things and issues from that relationship that are affecting my marriage right now. And so right now is the moment where I'm actually learning why all these things happened before, why I had to be alone, why I had to be like in this abusive relationship. And I just feel like if you guys like do it from the beginning and have this relationship with yourself first, and not try to find anyone like to complete you or to make you better or make you happy. You have that within you, and you know it's just, it's not worth giving up your truth and giving up um like who you really are, um just to either make somebody happy or find somebody to make you happy. um you need to find that first within yourself, if that makes sense. You need to have a relationship with you first. That's my whole learning about everything I've been through. Also, because when you know where you're standing and what your truth is, you don't spread yourself thin as well, because you're trying to please everybody. You're not putting boundaries. You're not limiting what other people is doing, and you're not limiting yourself from doing things that are hurting you just to make others happy. Just because you want acceptance, or because you want to be like included, or anything like that. You're just spreading yourself thin, and you're giving from an empty cup. You need to fill that cup first. You need to be with you first. You need to love yourself first. And I think younger generations now have this level of spiritual realization and maturity to know that they're worth a lot more um, than what's expected, or whatever people are telling them to do. So for one, good job, guys. Because yeah, it's been a really hard road. I know it's been my journey. I don't regret any of it, like, at all. But yeah, just, I think my biggest advice is just to really understand where you're coming from, where your fear is at, why you're doing the things you do, why you're like diminishing yourself with certain relationships, and what you want out of that relationship, and what you want out of the relationship with yourself first. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say.
Beautifully said, Camila. Thank you so much for sharing. That's wonderful. Awesome. Okay, we'll keep passing the talking stick around. So if somebody wants to let me know who wants to go next, Dani, we'll pass it over to you. So yeah, again, there's a lot of things that we're hitting upon here. There's a few things that I want to be able to get into later. Even just kind of like for those of us, like when a relationship is really in that special place where it's like really kind of like in this like ideal place, like what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is that experience like? How has that transformed you? For those of us who want to be able to share anything on that. And then I also want to be able to get into a little bit of, like what are some things that we have found that has been helpful following the transformation period after a breakup. So again, kind of like the rebuilding ourselves phase. What like practical things might have been helpful for us related to like our spiritual practices. So Dani, we'll pass it over to you. Anything else you want to jump in with, go right ahead when you're ready, Dani, and welcome.
All right. Well, one thing I really wanted to talk about is just the fact that in our society and in our media and television and movies, most relationships we see are not healthy relationships. There's a lot of codependence that is glamorized, and that's kind of the idea of everybody is half a soul, half a person, and we're supposed to find our other half, and then we suddenly become whole. We suddenly feel complete once we find the right person who can say the right things and know exactly how to soothe us in our moments of pain. But that's a really dangerous ideology to believe. I mean, even in the Notebook, for example, at the beginning, as he's trying to get a date with this girl, he threatens to kill himself in order to get a date with her. And if you normalize that, it's just really not okay to think that that's how you can get into a relationship and guilting someone into loving you. Um, I was in a really codependent relationship for about a year and a half, and I really loved this person. But at the same time, I also had grown up in a family, a very loving family, but I had siblings who fought all the time. So I was expected to give up my needs and give up my concerns in order to keep the peace. And I was happy to do that. But once I got into a relationship, I was continually doing that. And I didn't even realize that a lot of the behaviors were so toxic because I was expected to compromise my truth and myself for the sake of her and for the sake of her well-being. And I didn't even realize that certain behaviors were toxic, so I didn't know how to communicate my needs and communicate what I truly needed. And if you're growing up in a world where on TV you're seeing all of these unhealthy relationships, how are you supposed to know that yours isn't healthy? And in my opinion, one thing that once I broke up with her, I kind of saw her as a toxic person and was like, well, she was manipulating me. She was making me feel like I couldn't reach out to my friends and such. But I now have come to realize that there's no such thing as a healthy person in a toxic relationship. Because if there's a healthy person in a toxic relationship, the moment they see certain behaviors, they're going to be able to communicate, hey, this isn't okay with me. This behavior hurts me. And if you're going to continue this behavior, then I can't be in this relationship. And if you are, in a way, it's weird because maybe your behavior isn't outwardly toxic or outwardly manipulative, but by keeping it at all in and expecting the other person to understand and get you without having to go through the difficulties and the bravery, I guess, of coming forward and explaining your needs, then you are in a way encouraging that toxic behavior to continue. You're not challenging them. You're not pushing them to be the best version of themselves because you're just pleasing them and allowing them to continue the cycle that they're perpetuating. And I hadn't even realized for a long time that I was a part of that. And there was this guilt inside of me even after the relationship. Like I felt like I could have done better and I didn't exactly know why. And then in going through my spiritual awakening and really questioning myself and my beliefs, I realized my part in that relationship. And although that doesn't necessarily excuse her behavior that wasn't healthy towards me, it's about realizing that we all have our own trauma and our own wounds that we need to work on, and blaming another person for what they was a part of that is all good. Any relationship that, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, in any situation essentially where you're only blaming the other person and not taking accountability for yourself, then you're never going to be able to improve. And I think a lot of people get into the mindset of blaming other people, and then they'll continue getting into these toxic relationships, repeating the same patterns and not even necessarily looking in the mirror and seeing where they play into this. And that's not to say that you are blaming the victim in any sense, but you have to, everyone has their own trauma and their own journey. We don't want to, again, be two halves that make a whole. We want to be two wholes that make a unit. We need to love ourselves and soothe ourselves and know what we need before we can expect someone else to know how to do that for us.
Thank you, Dani, for sharing. Absolutely. if anybody else wants to, or like even just respond to anything, please feel free to let me know. But yeah, again, you know, like the whole themes of relationship, and I'll just babble on here for a second. And again, whoever wants to pass the talking stick to next, just put your hand up and let me know. The whole theme of, again, even just having this discussion is this idea that, you know, through relationships, we become more conscious, especially if we intentionally become conscious. But usually when we're younger, before we've kind of like had this like spiritual realization, it's almost like we're just kind of like going along with the motions, you know, like we don't really fully we don't have the same awareness of it, where it's very much just like, oh, this person hurt me, I'm going to respond in a certain way, or I like this person, I'm going to do this. And it's very much just kind of like going with the biochemical emotions, and everything's just kind of unfolding and stuff like that. But again, you know, as we continue to get older and everything like that, it's naive to think that you can't get into a relationship without it requiring a degree of responsibility. And again, I think it's responsible for us to be able to bring the best version of ourselves into a relationship. And again, this is where we get this constant theme of filling your own cup or filling your own self-love as you continue to kind of connect with others. But at the same time, I think it's also important to note that, you know, for some people, they would even feel some they would feel like a little bit of, I'm not quite sure if shame would be the most accurate word. It's not the word I would use, but I know for some people, they might be in a place where it's just like, oh, you know, like I have trouble loving myself, and I'm still having trouble loving myself, and it would actually help me if I had someone else who is able to kind of like be in that space to help me see myself. So I think, again, you know, like different relationships will kind of arrive to us in different ways when we need them, because there may be certain times where, again, you know, like if the universe's objective is for you to be able to raise into this level where you can really see like who you are as like this amazing person and everything like that, I think sometimes there will be appropriate circumstances where you will kind of find another person, perhaps at a moment in your life where you may be kind of like down on yourself and feeling kind of low and everything like that. It happens in a lot of ways. So it's not always going to be simply this thing where it's like, oh, you know, like that next great relationship will only show up if you're on your A game and you're taking care of yourself. I think it kind of like, it's always going to be relative. It's always going to be different for other people. But I think it's okay to be able to understand and to acknowledge where we are at, and to just be able to be very gentle with ourselves, and to be able to understand it's like, yeah, you know what, like I'm still in the process of learning to love myself. Like I'm still like, you know, and that could be coming from previous relationships, it could be coming from childhood and everything like that. But again, you know, I think when it comes to relationships, it's important not to compare ourselves to others, and to really just kind of like honor where we are at. Obviously keep building that relationship that you have with yourself. But again, you know, like if whatever relationship comes to you, I think it's just always important to just bring as much mindfulness as you can into it, you know, like really reflect, like what are you bringing to it, what are you getting out of it, how is the balance, is there any codependency, how is the sovereignty, how are you respecting people. And I'll just say this real quick, and then again, if somebody can just put their hand up so I know who Rachel, I'll pass it to you. One of the lessons that came to me through my years of, you know, falling in love and getting my heart broken and all of those fun things, was this idea of really being able to understand what my perspective of true love was, or deep love, deeper love. And that was something that I felt was always an important part of my journey, is that as the journey continued, and this was really relative, not even just romantic relationships, but really any relationship, it was really just kind of like this maturity that just kind of came through experience, of understanding that for me, deep love, very simply put, was this idea of wanting the best for someone else, regardless of whether or not it even involves you. And that for me was like, once I kind of clued into that, I was like, whoa, like to hear myself say that and to like really feel it and to genuinely feel it, was such a shift. Because prior to that, there would have been circumstances where going through heartbreak and everything like that, it was always something where a lot of my attention would be on me, which was normal. That's where I was. But eventually, as I began to like mature, and I'm like, wait a second, like I need to be able to learn how to let this go, because holding on to this is just causing me more pain, right? And then eventually it kind of gets to this point where it's like, I love this person so much that I want the best for them. even if that doesn't involve me. And when you can really say that to yourself and really mean it from a genuine place, it's almost like the universe is like, ding, 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 ding. Like, you did it. You figured it out. Like, that's the secret. Congratulations. And then again, it kind of, it allows you to be in this place where, again, even out of a relationship in the past, it allows you to take, it's part of the healing process where, again, you might be able to look back on things and might be able to kind of like move through resentment and stuff like that. There's many dynamics to it. Again, relationships are very complicated things because we as humans are very complicated things, and they will show up in many different ways and many different times. And again, you know, like I think one of the things that's quite fascinating with relationships, and we might be able to talk about it here tonight if people feel called to, is even the idea of like navigating things when your heart maybe feels called into two directions at once, you know. And then you start getting into this idea of like polyamory or like open relationships. And I'm sure like in many ways some of us have probably kind of like dabbled in this from some soul experience or something like that. But again, you know, like I think in a lot of cases you look at the world today and you look at kind of the culture, and it's like this like hookup culture type thing, and people are just very approaching relationships on this very superficial level. And you look at kind of what the mainstream culture is kind of propagating, even again with what Dani was saying, as being this very like unhealthy version of a relationship where it's very much, sometimes it's like purely just related to the sex. Again, it can be very superficial. It can be very like, again, like just like codependent. It can be very manipulative and things like that. And the communication can also be very, like there might be a lot of struggle with the communication. And then I think in some cases, I'll get, you know, if you guys have a thought on that, I'm just looking at this as an observation from the outside. I think in a lot of cases when we look at things where we get people like cheating on other people and things like that, I think that isn't necessarily so much this process of like people being like, oh, you know, like this person's a horrible person and they cheated on that person. I think sometimes it's actually a deeper issue where it's like, what if we knew how to communicate better in the first place so that we could communicate where we're at before it even has to get to this point where suddenly it's like, you're the bad person, and everyone's pointing at each other. Imagine a society where we could be like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling like there's someone else I met. They spark something inside of me. Can I talk to you about this, right? Like, but again, that takes a degree of maturity. Polyamory definitely requires like this whole, it brings in this whole other dynamic, but again, it also kind of like brings us into more of who we are. Rachel, I know you're super excited. I'm gonna pass it over to you. Rachel, go right ahead when you're ready.
I have so much gratitude to be here tonight. Thank you for holding this space. Also, I'm so glad you just said everything you said because that is relevant to some of the points I wanted to touch on. Yeah. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here with everyone tonight. And I guess I'll touch on that first. Also, I wanted to go back to something Ashley mentioned, the idea of things being inherently neutral and that no situation is actually good or bad. And this is actually coming from the chart that Kris was talking about, comparing third and fourth density relationships and what that might look like. And one of the two comparisons is fear-based monogamy versus relationships by choice. And it talks about there is no inherent right or wrong to any type of relationship. They are all inherently neutral. Any type of relationship is okay. If I choose monogamy, this does not mean that I expect or need my partner to also choose monogamy. And that's kind of touching on like, we all inherently have the right to feel the way we feel, and there is no good or bad about the way we might feel. And this is actually the fear-based monogamy part that it talks about, saying, through monogamous relationships, I am separated from the vulnerability of having to deal with any other relationship. Therefore, I feel safe, separate, and safe. So that's saying like, you're taking yourself away from any other potential influences on the relationship with relationships with other people. And this is bringing me back to the very first relationship I was ever in the 8th grade. Actually, one of the lessons I learned from that relationship was that I attached so heavily to that person that all of my other relationships in my life, like all my platonic relationships with my friends, my parents, everyone else, those relationships suffered because I was so focused on this relationship with this one person. So that's not so much like romantically, like polyamory or anything like that, but just like the idea that when we're so focused on this one romantic relationship that's going to complete us, so to speak, or like that is like the relationship, you know, and it's kind of taking away from any other relationship that we might have in our life. And I noticed throughout all my relationships that there was this element of I would get in a relationship and withdraw from my friends and start talking to them less because I was talking to this other person all the time instead. And I think that's something that a lot of people might be able to relate to. Just the like, and again, I feel like that's kind of portrayed in the media too, that like, you know, once you're in a relationship, like it's all about the relationship with that person and everyone else kind of falls by the wayside. And that kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about commitment, because okay, wait, before I get into that, my example of in my past relationship with the concept of cheating, actually, my most recent relationship, we broke up last July, so it's almost been a year. It was a very, one of those like, I got a lot out of the relationship. And as you were talking about the breakup period, actually, like, I learned even more during that period of time than even in the relationship. And I just really got a lot out of it in general. But one of the things was um, he was asking me about entering into threesome relationships for the sexual component of wanting to include another woman. Um, and which I tried to express to him multiple times that it wasn't so much that I was against the idea of it, but it was against the idea of like why he wanted to do that, because he was arguing that we didn't have a spark and that by bringing in someone else that would somehow help us. But in my mind, bringing in another person wasn't going to help our relationship. It was just going to complicate things more by adding this additional person, which gets into like, again, like feeling that a little bit of that fear-based monogamy, but also realizing that like he was trying to fix the relationship by bringing in a new component to the relationship, which I was having a hard time wrapping my head around at the time. And he had actually broken up with me 2 times, and I kept insisting that we stay together. So that was me knowing that I was not in a necessarily compatible relationship and refusing to let go of it. And then like him also being like, oh yeah, like both of us being like, oh, but I love you so much, even though we have all these problems and struggles, but I can't let go of this relationship. And so the third time that he decided he wanted to break up with me, I finally said, I was just like completely cool about it. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, if you need to leave, because he presented it as I need to break up with you so I can take care of myself, because we moved out across the country together for me to go to grad school. So I felt like he had no direction because he packed up everything and moved across the country with me so I could pursue my dream. And then he didn't have a job for 2 years when we had moved out here together. So that was a huge strain on the relationship. And he, breaking up with me last July, said, I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. I need to move away and live separate from you so that I can figure out what I'm meant to be doing. And I was very understanding of that because that made a ton of sense to me. We were having all these issues mostly around like little things, and especially the fact that he was expecting equal work from me when I was working 2 jobs and in grad school, and he was not working, and he was expecting me to do my fair share of the dishes and cleaning around the apartment. And to me, that didn't sound like my fair share, considering I had responsibilities when he really had no actual responsibilities other than pursuing his own desires every day. So that was a big issue. And so I let him leave, and I shouldn't say let him leave. I came to a place where it made sense for that to happen, so we agreed on that. And then it was the months after that that became really challenging because he kept wanting to continue talking to me. I kept wanting to continue talking to him, and I didn't understand that in his mind the relationship really was over, but in my mind it was like this interim period where he was going to go figure his stuff out and we would get back together eventually. And I feel like he was kind of hoping for that too, but you know, it took quite a few months of us going back and forth and him coming back to see me every once in a while. And it was probably like 3 or 4 months later, he came back to visit me, and he had only been here for like maybe 20 minutes. And he went to leave after 20 minutes and said, the spark's just not there. I can't do this. I have to go. And I just remember like sobbing and screaming at him not to leave, because he had just got there and I didn't understand what he meant by, oh, the spark's not there anymore, because he was expecting to come back after a few months and it was going to be like brand new again, like we were just meeting again for the first time, like the way it was when we first met. And um, to me, that was really challenging, but also helped me realize that the relationship really was like, that was kind of it for me. And then it was interesting because like 3 or 4 months ago, he messaged me, and this was the kicker for me. He finally admitted to having cheated on me multiple times. And I had just asked him many times just to be honest with me, that was all I cared about, was honesty and having this trust. But he had broke my trust so many times that when he was finally honest about it, I said, you lied to me. You accused me of cheating on you when you know and I know that I would never have done that. And all I wanted was honesty, and I could have forgiven him for all the cheating, for any of that. That wasn't really what mattered. It was the lying and the not being honest about it and upfront in the first place. So there was a lot of lessons in that relationship, but I firmly believe I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't experienced all of that. So it was a very rocky road. I honestly feel like I disassociated and blocked out a lot of it. That was a big part of my relationship with him, was driving in the car with him and listening to him talk. And this ties back into what you guys were talking about too, with the not expressing my voice, just not saying what I needed to say, just kind of sitting with it, and definitely just disassociating, like not feeling like I was in my body, and just not even hearing what he was saying either. So neither of us was feeling heard. I wasn't feeling heard. He wasn't feeling heard. I couldn't speak up. Excuse me. So like, I feel like I kind of blocked out a lot of it, but I feel like the big lessons that I got from it really have carried me forward. And especially these last few months, like, thank you for the relationship that I have with all of you guys. This is really beautiful to be here to have this connection with you, because that was one of the things that I told myself back in January. It was almost a New Year's resolution where I said I was going to reach out to try and be social, because I have made very few friends since I moved to Portland 2 years ago. And I told myself, oh, I'm going to get out. I'm going to start doing events with my classmates. I'm going to start doing all of these social things. And then quarantine happened. But then I found you guys. So here I am with all of you, and I have this amazing new social circle and all these new friends and relationships that I'm building with all of you. So that's really beautiful. And I just really value this space. And thank you so much. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing again, for sharing your heart, for sharing your wisdom. And yeah, no, again, I think it's always important to be able to like see where we've come from, but then to really like honor where we are now, and just like seeing you like so much in your power and your center, and gotten to know you. It's just, again, that's the thing with those relationships. You'll go through this stuff, and in the moment you're just like, why, and then flash forward like 6 months, and you're just like, okay, like I'm like a bit of a badass here, because again, you know, like I've gotten this experience to be able to go through it, and again, now you've also really gotten clear on what it is that you value in a relationship, which again is like this honesty and everything like that. And it really is kind of like so much of what we go through in relationships. And again, everybody else, just put your hand up for whoever wants to jump in next. We see this a lot in relationships, and I know we're kind of talking about like the things that don't always work well in relationships, and that's where I want to be able to transition into, you know, talking about the things that do make a relationship work well. But we do see this a lot in a relationship, again, like this, a lot of like this projecting mentality, where it's like, you know, like someone will really like take something that they have unresolved into them, and they will put it on the other person. And then a lot of this creates it's very challenging, and it can again just kind of like lead to some very, very difficult issues to be able to work through, and at the same time it can be a very, very powerful place for two people to be able to decide, is this something that we want to heal through together, but ultimately those two people have to mutually decide that, or to even be able to decide, like what type of relationship do we want, and what is the best way for us to be able to support each other. And that's where again, like sometimes with relationships, it's really powerful to be able to observe the dynamics of how a relationship can transform as it kind of like shifts out of a romantic relationship to a platonic relationship. And it takes a lot of maturity for two people to be able to be like, yo, like I still really care about you, but like this isn't working, like something's not working here, like how can we still transform this relationship without destroying it? And then you can get into this place where it's like, like what does it mean to still have a decent relationship with your ex or something like that? Like how is that possible and stuff like that? And again, I think it takes a lot of respect for yourself. It takes a lot of clear communication. It takes a lot of honesty. It takes a lot of clarity and just being able to decide like what it is that you want to be able to move forward into. And sometimes in a lot of cases, and I'm sure some of us have experienced with this, there will be times in your relationship where you'll have to take the lead. Like you'll have to be like, look, like this is what's gonna happen here, like because like from that degree of consciousness, it's like this is the direction that I want to move things in. Otherwise, things just kind of might end up going in a loop, so to speak. And that's when like the that something needs to be changed, right? If like you keep going back to the same problems, and then eventually like the universe is like, this is going to keep happening until you use your power to step up and say like, okay, let's change this X, Y, and Z. And then to be able to create a condition and then say like, like maybe, yeah, like let's see what it's like if we do take a break. Let's see what it's like if we do just kind of like sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation. And yeah, again, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head here and everything like that. But yeah, I do want to be able to talk a little bit more about kind of the dynamics of like the relationships when they're really beautiful, like when they're really at that magic. And I mean, they're all beautiful in their own way, even in the times when they're less beautiful on the surface, because there is still that growth. But I would love to be able to hear just from our own experience. And again, this is something that for some of us, like we're far enough along our journey that we've gotten into relationships that are again kind of like this very harmonious version. And I'll just hit upon this real quick because I literally just made a video on TikTok today about the concept of twin flames relative to soulmates, and I'll set this up just to be able to maybe segue here. And whoever wants to jump in next, not sure, I know we haven't heard from Kristen and Erica, and we also have Felicia here, but whoever wants to jump in next and just feel free to let me know. And if you've already spoken, don't hesitate to jump in again. But yeah, real quick, I'll just explain. So again, like the whole like twin flames and soulmate, I made a video about this. Some of you would have seen this, where basically it was this idea that, yeah, there's a lot of definitions about soulmates and twin flames, but ideally we should find one that's healthy. The one definition that I've really resonated with, it was by a guy named Matt Kahn, Kahn. Some of you are familiar with him. He kind of talks about this. But basically, and I'm setting this up because I want to talk about the harmonious aspect. The twin flame relationship is basically anyone within your life who kind of sparks your growth. This can be a romantic relationship, but sometimes it can also kind of like start off as something that feels really exciting, and then it can kind of become a little bit toxic. But again, you still grow out of it because it moves you into your power. The soulmate relationship, the soulmate concept, I think makes most sense when you look at it from the concept of a soulmate relationship. And so a soulmate relationship is a type of relationship that is much more harmonious. Again, it's something that comes a little bit further within our journey. That's usually a reflection of our own degree of maturity, but it's a type of relationship where like the ego is not as present. There's not the same projection. You're really respecting each other's sovereignty. You're supporting each other. You're honoring each other's like similarities and differences. You're really giving each other that space. So again, like whereas like the twin flame might be, and this is an example Matt Kahn gives, like imagine you're sitting there and you're just like spending time by yourself, like doing your own thing, and then the partner comes up to you, and this would be like a kind of like a less than harmonious twin flame relationship. And not to say all twin flame relations aren't always harmonious, but they do kind of like, they can have a tendency to move into this place where it's more a little bit like less harmonious. But anyways, the version that's not a soulmate relationship would be the situation where someone's kind of sitting there doing their own thing, and they're just like, yeah, you know, like the other person will come and be like, hey, like what's going on, what are you doing, and be like, oh, like I'm just hanging out and spending time by myself. And then like the person will be like, oh, like, can I hang out with you, like can I hover over you, like can I like I don't want to, like I'm like I don't want to work on my own stuff, so can I just distract myself by like constantly just kind of like putting myself in your presence, type thing. So this can sometimes be again, you know, like the, not to say that like that in itself is like, again, you know, like there's always room for improvement. It's about, again, being able to bring awareness and consciousness. But whereas the soulmate relationship would very simply be like, oh, like, what are you up to? Be like, oh yeah, I'm just spending time with myself. And be like, cool, all right, awesome, sweet, like I support that, and I'm just gonna, you know, I'll go do my stuff by myself, right? So there's this very different relationship where there isn't this codependency. And I can say, and again, if we want to transition into just talking about kind of like, again, like the lessons that we learn through the harmonious aspects of relationship, I've been able to, like, fortunately be in a relationship that I do consider to be a soulmate relationship, and it is like something that I feel it, like it's so beautiful, it's so inspiring, but it didn't just happen. Like, it literally came as a result of a lot of inner work. And it's one of those things where, like, the relationship where it is now, like, it wouldn't have been possible if it tried to happen 5 years earlier, sort of thing. Even though in some way, like, part of me would have been like, oh sweet, I could have jumped into this 5 years earlier, but literally on a soul level, I wasn't ready for it. And I didn't even know that I wasn't ready for it. I had to go through a couple other relationships in order to be able to kind of like get ready for it and learn to be able to really bring this sovereignty into my heart. And again, as we kind of develop more of a confidence and an understanding of who we are, it really allows us to gift this relationship with this other person, where again, you really honor the time that you spend apart, and then when you do spend time together, it's like really, really powerful. It's really, really magnetic. But again, you know, like the relationships when they're in their harmonious state, it's very reminiscent of, again, you know, kind of like this idea of like the concept of like a divine marriage, where it's like a dyadic cyclone, synergy, two parts create a bigger whole, and there's literally like something new that is birthed out of it. And again, even in those relationships where they might feel like they're incredibly harmonious and things like that, it doesn't mean that they won't come with their own challenges. And obviously through my own relationships over the years, like they're all of us have had these challenges where, you know, like you might just be with a person and you're like, oh, this is great, and then there might be something that might happen like completely outside of your control, and then the universe is like, okay, what do you do in this moment? Like, how do you show up for this person, right? How do you show up in the midst of like trauma and chaos and things like that? And this is where, you know, like how, like, being able to learn how to hold space for someone, be it a friend or a lover, in those times of uncertainty is a huge part of the experience of the lessons of the relationship, you know. For example, like, this is like, I was kind of thinking about this, and I'm not saying this to put it as like a downer or anything like that, but more so to focus on just like the deepness of the love. It's kind of like this idea where it's like, if you're with someone and you're kind of at this point in your journey and you're just like, okay, we're gonna ride this out for as long as we can, and let's just kind of like aim for however long and stuff like that, you have to expect that there will be certain points where bad things will happen, and it will be stressful, and there will be challenges, and I'm literally talking about things like, you know, like, and again, I'm not trying, I'm kind of resistant to say this because I just don't want to put the thought in our mind, but it is just a reality of the situation where it's like, imagine being in like a soulmate relationship and you have to literally go through this process of like being with your partner when, say, for example, like their parents die or something like that. Like, how do you show up in that moment? How do you show up in those moments? And so again, like, those, using that as kind of an extreme example, the moments that are fun and joyful and everything like those are great, those are wonderful and everything like that, but it's also those deep moments where there's like that unexpected shadow that arrives and everything like that, and then how do you show up? Then how do you really show up? So, and honestly, like, it's interesting, if you've ever gone to if anybody here has ever gone to a transformational festival with a partner, usually transformational festivals can be very triggering in some ways. And if you've ever gone through that, that can usually sometimes be like a very interesting dynamic experience to be able to help each other grow. But the other thing I'll just say here, and again, somebody else, go ahead, put your hand up for anybody who wants to go, because I'm just like babbling right now. Camila, thank you. The other thing I was going to say, from my experience of kind of like the relationship thing, is very much this very magical concept of what I basically refer to as reverse time theory, where it's basically this idea that like you meet someone and you can kind of like feel your future before it's happened. And I'm just mentioning that to just kind of like keep an eye open for it, because I think when it does kind of come to those soulmate relationships, it's very interesting because there's almost like this gravity, you know, like this is where you get into this concept of love literally being a force, you know, literally being something that pulls people together. And I know that for the relationship with my partner, it very was this thing where like even before we were like in a relationship, I was like, whoa, like I can feel like something, and I'm not just making this up. Like I literally like love this person in a very deep way. That was very, again, kind of like transcendental, in a sense, you know. And then there's like that first moment when, and I'm not trying to get personal, but when, you know, like you kiss and stuff like that. And I said this to them. I'm like, whoa, okay, like kissing you, like here now for the very first time, like it feels like I've kissed you 1,000 times before. You know, and then it's just like, oh, that's so gushy and romantic, right? But I literally wasn't joking. I literally, like, that was like me. Like, that wasn't just like, I wasn't trying to sound like, you know, like why am I forgetting his name? The guy from The Notebook, Ryan Gosling. Yeah, there we go. Anyways, Ryan, I have the same hat as him and stuff like that. But anyways, you know, I'm not just trying to sound like this kind of like sappy romantic and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to the lessons of relationships and love and everything like that, the thing that's always fascinated me is when you start getting into this very kind of like bigger picture of like seeing the union between souls, and really even like starting to get into this idea of like have you like had dreams about your partner, and what does that look like when two people show up in a relationship with that kind of like spiritual awareness and stuff like that. And that's when the relationship starts getting very multidimensional. It's like you're dreaming about each other even before like things might happen and stuff like that. People talk about this all the time, but again, you know, like I think in a lot of ways we're destined to kind of meet certain people within our path, and we're destined to kind of have these relationships, and they're there literally to be able to help each other grow. But the bigger thing I feel is that for those of us who are kind of on this conscious path, I feel that we kind of come together with certain partners, literally to be able to support each other on our mission of shifting consciousness. It's not literally just this thing where it's just like, oh, this is going to be a beautiful relationship just because, you know, we want you to be able to experience it. But it's like, no, you guys like actually chose to incarnate here like as a team to be able to support each other in like a mission to be able to help shift consciousness. That's for me kind of like what I feel, fortunately, like in the relationship. And again, and that's like coming from like previous relationships where there wasn't that same kind of like spiritual maturity. And now I'm in a relationship where there's that same type of spiritual maturity. I'm like, yo, like this is exciting. Like I feel like I'm on like a secret mission with like my like secret alien space girlfriend or something like that here on Earth to help change the paradigm and stuff like that. Anyways, yeah, right. But anyways, I'm just talking from my own experience, but I imagine my experience is something that is kind of echoed in some of us who are kind of at that level where we're starting to get into those various degrees of relationships. Anyways, I babbled on there for a little bit too long. Camila, I'll pass it over to you, and please feel free to jump in. And anybody else, just let us know afterwards. Go ahead, Camila.
That was awesome. So yeah, regarding my relationship with my husband, so it's been a long road, like I said. You know, I kind of started working on my shadows very recently. So I was projecting a lot of my shadows onto him. I was still in a place where I wasn't being able to talk or say what I was feeling. And finally, like I kind of, you know, allowed myself to be vulnerable. And when I did this, everything changed. Because so that was one of the breakthroughs of our relationship, because our communication was terrible. And so we were never able to, you know, be like in the same page, on the same page. So when I actually told him, hey, there's a lot of things about myself that I need to work on, and I need you to like support me on this journey because, it's gonna be hard, and I'm gonna be, projecting things onto you, not necessarily because you're doing anything wrong, but I'm just like dealing with my own stuff, and that made all the difference because now he understood where I was coming from, why I was getting angry, why I was exploding like this. Like a lot of situations that I brought on from past relationships and that he brought on from past relationships, we were able to kind of, talk about it. And so that's absolutely key if you want a good relationship. So, like I said, this started. So actually, before COVID, we were actually going to separate. And we were talking about like me moving to my mom's house and a lot of stuff. We were like in a really bad place. But it's really funny how, life knows and the universe knows how to do things and where to put you, you have to be, they know where you have to be. And so I kind of trusted, that this was for a reason. I thought that we were gonna, being in the same space. He was working from home. I'm a photographer. I work from home all the time, so I kind of was used to being here. But having him here kind of switched my whole routine, my whole life, basically. And so he started to get on my nerves a lot. And this made me actually see a lot of the things that I had to work through in order to, I said, okay, if the universe is putting me in this situation with him, it's I need to understand that a relationship is not like, the other person is not going to bring me that happiness. I need to find that myself. And so when I started to go through that myself, and he knew that I was going through that, he was very supportive. And actually, I understood that this person was actually to be meant to be in my life because he was, willing and wanting to do these things with me and to work through them with me at the same time as he told me, I know that I need to work things for myself as well. And so in order that, for us to understand each other and get to this point where we can, because we're very different people. Like he's a very, you know, I don't know, like he likes to, he's a statistician, so I don't know, he's very organized and things like that. I'm an artist. I'm all over the place all the time. Like I'm, emotional and passionate, and I'm like, oh, and he's like the cool and the, he thinks like things before. And so actually that was one of the issues because he kind of was looking for resolution right away all the time. And I couldn't give him resolution right away because I would explode. I was coming from a very emotional and passionate and not like really saying the things that I really wanted to say, but just exploding. So the fact that we knew that this was happening also made us like work it through. So now, like we, like if I get into that place, like where I'm starting to, bubble up and want to explode or whatever, he understands that he needs to give me a little bit of time, to think things through and to actually be able to have a conversation and communicate with him. Because before we were just reacting, we were just like, yeah, just reacting, not really uh, hearing what the other was saying. So this was huge, being vulnerable and being able to speak what you're going through, and like just not be afraid, because if you're with the right person is gonna go through it with you, and you're both gonna get to a place where you can ascend in love instead of falling in love. You know, it's very different. I've fallen in love a lot of times and hit myself hard. And this has been a completely different experience. You know, it's been 11 years. We had a 4-year relationship from long distance. Um, you know, it's been trying in a lot of ways. Also, culturally, even like the language. Sometimes I'll say things and my tone, or you know, I don't mean to say it a certain way, but then he understands it differently. So now he knows, and so he asks me, like, are you saying this or are you saying that? You know, are you meaning this or are you meaning that? And in the same way, I also ask him. But it's it's very important to understand that you have to be vulnerable, and you know, you need to let them know how you are, where you are, in your, you know, process. Otherwise, it's just not gonna work out. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you, Camila, again for sharing your wisdom from that experience. It's beautiful. Thank you, beautiful. All right, I'm not going to jump in here just yet because again I just want to be able to pass the microphone around. We'll keep going. We'll probably push this broadcast a little bit over 2 hours. If anybody needs to leave early, just let me know. Felicia, you have your hand up. We'll pass it over to you. So Felicia, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and then again anybody else will get into some more conversation as we go. So.
Oh God, did it work?
Yep, we
oh
can
God,
hear you.
Did it work? Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Go ahead, Felicia.
This
welcome.
is the first time I've ever used Zoom, so this is interesting. And sorry if I'm especially like scatterbrained. I'm feeling, you know, forewarning, feeling many feels all around. You know, feel free to, you know, cut me off or rein me in at any point.
No worries. It's all.
But and it's kind of funny every time I've done one of these things. It's like I get all nervous once in a while, and then I'm like, as soon as I start talking, like it evens itself out. We always work it out somehow. But it's also hard with this one because I relate to like every detail, like everybody's saying in one way or another. So it's like, all right, come on, channel those thoughts. And especially on both the good and bad sides, which is kind of how I'll start to focus a little. That I've both been recently like learning so much and growing so much and having so many revelations from all like the negative parts of my past with relationships and like abuse and traumas and so on, and then realizing a lot of like still like epiphanies about the good too, and like oh man, especially lately, like kind of not necessarily like, it's weird, it's not good or bad because it's grief, but beautiful because some of y'all also like, it's kind of like a Venn diagram, the good, the bad, and the middle. Some of y'all, especially in the YouTube, will hear me, or the Discord too, will hear me talk about my friend Doobie or Greg and how he passed, and he was so like, you know, crystals, everything spiritual, and just like he would be right in with us, you know, if his body was here today. And like having him as the spirit guide where I felt his presence, people have channeled him like while I was crying at festivals. Like this one person, I met him, and the person he knew had like the same parallel opposite situation. They passed the same day, and he like channeled him to tell me that he was proud of me. Like, and it was one of those things like you just don't doubt it, like you just kind of know. Like I'm not really like grasping the words, but and not derailing, but going to one of the more good things that even in any bad we had was a good thing, that I think might have been, if not him, it was one of our friends, that they were both actually present the night we met, that I think are who brought me to Brendon's first things, like broadcast, like forever ago, like not the full 10 years, but it's been like more than 5, less than 10, I think. And that person was when Brendon earlier was talking about remembering things before they've happened, especially with these like twin flames and soulmates and so on, especially the soulmates, like, and having like possibly having multiple twin flames, or like some people, you know, talking about having multiple soulmates, and he was the first person that I had like really bonded with that about, or thought about that with. And oh man, I'm having a thought, but I really can't put it into words, so I might want to pass it to someone else for a bit, because I'm like going on something with it, but I'm losing my like verbal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, if you need to take a moment, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think I have to take a break for a little bit, because I have other thoughts, but I just can't put them into words right now. Oh, real quick, I will want to say that as I was saying a little bit in the comments, but I just want to thank everybody for making me feel so comfortable with my mouth stuff. That is all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Felicia, for being here and for sharing your voice. Awesome. Wonderful. All right, team. Yeah, again, I just want to be able to keep passing it around. I'm curious again, you know, like if anybody here, you guys are welcome to bring up all this stuff, but again, I kind of wanted to hear from like people on terms of like, you know, what makes a healthy relationship, you know, like even for the females here, please feel free to even say, you know, like what do you look for in a relationship, and you know, just kind of opening up a little bit of that discussion to be able to bring forth a little bit of like divine feminine wisdom. So not to say that the males wouldn't be able to have the same thing, but again, just want to be able to welcome you guys to be able to share as well. So Ashley, I can see you laughing at me. Do you want to go next? I'm just joking. I mean, you're welcome to, but again, I know we still have Kristen and Erica and anybody else. You guys just let me know. Just put your hand up if you're ready to jump in. Kristen? Yeah, okay, cool. We'll pass over to Kristen, and we'll make sure to see if the audio is working okay too. So go ahead, Kristen.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay
yeah,
now?
It sounds fine. You're
Awesome.
Good to go.
Awesome. Well, hey, I just wanted to say I'm super proud of all of you for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your experiences. It's always really lovely to be able to learn and grow from each other. And every time we share our experience, we are able to connect with each other on a deeper level and to be able to connect with ourselves too. So I just wanted to say thank you all so much for being lovely mirrors. And that's lovely. As far as relationships go, I have always really thought that there's always something we can learn in every situation. And unfortunately, most of mine have been like karmic lessons learned. But at the end of the day, I am so grateful for every single lesson that I've had to learn, no matter how bad or good it may have been, because it has led me to a point in my life where I am able to better love myself. And I think ultimately on my spiritual path, relationships have been really important for me to be able to learn how to properly love myself and to learn how to speak up for myself and how to stand by my boundaries, and to know that communication and trust and honesty are important. And you know, being able to see those situations when they arise in relationships and being able to recognize like, hey, this is a really beautiful, awesome moment where we are communicating, and hey, maybe the communication isn't going great, but at least we were able to open up that channel of communication and grow with each other. And sometimes you grow closer and sometimes you grow farther, but at the end of the day, you both grew, and that was what was important and what was meant to happen. So there's a lot more I could say. I wrote a ton of notes here, but as far as just keeping it with like the lessons learned, I think that it's just really important to look at situations that arise in your relationships, whether it's romantic or friends or soulmate or twin flame or whatever you'd like to call it. It's just important to really always look at the interactions you have with each other as opportunities to grow and learn about each other, so that way you can heal and become better and become more fulfilled in your purpose. And so like, I just think it's really important whenever we're reveling in the absolutely beautiful small moments that we are also like seeing those as like, wow, okay, this is an opportunity for me to see like what I really value in a relationship. And that way you can better fulfill your own life purpose. And yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say.
Awesome. Well spoken, Kristen. Thank you. And obviously, absolutely, there's always more for us to be able to dive into. So we'll, again, I'm okay with keeping this broadcast going for a little bit longer, just because I know there's so many layers to this topic. So again, if anybody else, if you guys have particular things you guys want to jump in on, just go ahead. Or again, you know, like even if you kind of want to approach it from the idea, like imagine you're speaking to people who are, you know, younger and learning, like what advice would you give them going into a relationship? Because again, that's a part of the intention here, where literally like I just can't help but think of like the younger people who are being brought up in this world and how confusing it must be for them to kind of be like navigating not only relationships but also their identity, their perception of self-worth, and how to be able to approach relationships in healthy ways and things like that. So if there's things you want to talk about there, but yeah, again, you know, when it comes to lessons, there's one thing that I'll just mention real quick, and I'll pass it over to whoever wants to go next. So again, just put your hands up if you want me to pass it over to you, and I'll pass it over to Felicia. One thing that helped me in one of my relationships, this was back in the day, and basically I'll just kind of like share it just like fairly bluntly, and neither of these people are really in my life anymore, and I'm not naming names or anything here, but basically it was a circumstance several years ago where I was in a relationship with a partner, and then they started to develop feelings for someone else, and then we kind of like approached this whole conversation of like, oh, you know, like, can this be an open relationship sort of thing? And even then, like, the term polyamory wasn't even in my lexicon, like that. I didn't know what that was. So that's where it was just kind of like, it's like, this is an open relationship. And then for me, like, that was so confusing. I'm like, I don't really understand what is actually like happening here and how to navigate this and stuff like that. And neither did they. And that was kind of the thing, is that we just kind of had to accept the fact that we were both just kind of like moving through things. And I think a lot of it is, you know, lack of education, lack of mentorship that kind of leads people to kind of going down these roads that ultimately just kind of like, in retrospect, could have been done differently. But one of the things in particular was moving up to this point where like I could feel myself like kind of like I was almost trying to like stop it from happening. I'm like, how could, like, I don't want her to be with this other partner. Like, this is an old version of me, right? Because like, I know like that will be really challenging for me. And so I was really approaching it from the perspective of like, how will this make me feel? And so I was like, almost kind of like trying to put myself, like I was trying to navigate it, and looking back on it, I had to like ask myself, I'm like, was I being manipulative? Like, was I like unconsciously being manipulative? And it, like, in some ways, like there was a little bit of that behavior, but it was also coming from, again, just this like not knowing how to navigate this and this insecurity. But as the relationship continued, eventually it kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, like this is like a train, like I can't stop this, like they've got chemistry between them, something's happening here, like I can't stop this. Like there's certain things that are outside of my control. Therefore, what is within my control? What is within my control that I can focus on? And what I could focus on was my response and my internal perception. And so this is my lesson. What I actually did is that I actually spent time meditating deeply and basically running through almost like a simulation in my mind of how it would feel knowing that like they got together, sort of thing, like literally to the point of like them, you know, like being intimate with each other. And I was literally just like, before it even happened, I was literally just like, okay, like I'm gonna assume it's already happened just to kind of run this as a simulation. And then I just like meditated like so hard and just felt so deeply and basically just felt everything I needed to in that moment. And then eventually I just kind of like moved into this clearing process, released all of this stuff. And again, even with that, kind of shifted into this paradigm of being able to be like, okay, you know, like this is, you know, I can't stop her from doing this. I don't want to stop her from doing this. If this is what she wants, then that's obviously her choice. All I hope is that she communicates things clearly, etc., etc. And then fast forward like a little bit later, she didn't really communicate things clearly, but eventually it comes to the surface that I find out that the two of them had been intimate with each other while we were still in a relationship. And again, there wasn't like the communication just wasn't there, so it was a little bit messy and stuff like that. But what was interesting was my ability to kind of like be in the presence of that information with just this like utmost serenity. Like instead of like, because I literally meditated it on my own ahead of time, it's not like when she told me I was like flips table, react with anger and stuff like that, which a part of me, because I already did that like in my own internal process. in a safe and healthy way. And then literally when she told me, like, I just literally was like there in just like a super present way and was just like as supportive as possible. And then flash forward a little bit later, she ended up ending the relationship with me, and she went on to be in a relationship with that guy. And then flash forward a little bit later, and eventually like I'm like at a point where, you know, I'm able to be in the same space with them, and I'm like, hey, like I'm happy for you guys, like I'm literally happy for you guys. So that was for me a big lesson. And another lesson I'll just, or maybe I'll save another lesson for later. I'll pass it over to Felicia, and then there's another one I want to share that's important, because again, I want to share it so that you guys can kind of like learn from it as well. Felicia, did you want to go next? Did you want to pass back to you? Yeah. Sorry, if you unmute. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Felicia. You can unmute yourself if you want to go next. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Sorry, my phone's a little slow. Okay, cool. So I think I might end up leaving this one a little brief, but with the concept of it's sort of a paradox between wanting to go back and like tell your younger self, like warn them, like when you have these epiphanies of like, wow, like I wish I could go back in time in my little like TARDIS for, you know, any Whovians, Doctor Who fans, like, and go and tell them like, hey, like take them by the shoulders and like, what are you doing? Or this person is being blah blah blah. But then realizing later on, like, wow, no, but I needed to go through that exactly how it is and have that exact lesson. But you still want to like go back, and maybe it's even good to do some like particular meditation therapy with a sort of going back and talking to your younger self and being like, hey, you know, like it's gonna be all right. Like this really sucks now, but you know that there's that part of you that, you know, wants to go back in time and be like, what were you doing? But then you're like, wait, no, I actually years later needed to realize that no, I needed to go through that lesson exactly as it was, exactly as absolutely excruciating as it was at the time. And I feel like also I wouldn't be able to quite like put it all into words, because not all of it was exact, but like the 50% that was exactly on point, like that I related to with what the story you just shared, Brendon, was like, if anyone saw my face, like that's what I was doing. I was like, oh man, yeah, that is 50% of that is part of a really big thing I've been going through therapeutically lately. So it's like, I don't know, it's something where I hate ever hearing anybody that like I care about in any form goes through something awful, but when like there's that point of when things happen to other people that you've been kind of isolated about, it's like, oh my god, I know how that feels. You know, like that. Oh man, what was that one theory I heard about? And I saw a meme about it a couple years ago. It was called like same hat. Like, I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about with the whole same hat thing. I feel like I'd think too hard about that. I actually went on a little bit longer than I planned to on that one, so I think I will pass it back to someone else for now. But I wanted to get at least those like base points out there, and
yeah,
apparently a couple add-ons too. But yeah, I definitely like wanted to put that part out there, and it was really kind of therapeutic in like the 50 to, I don't know, 60 to 70% or so I related to with the story you were telling, Brendon. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly that main thing I've been dealing with lately, and processing and having all these like strong epiphanies about, often channeling them during the morning meditations with our dragon roars, like no, I see the strength now. And you know, some days I still have my days of like no and doubt, but you know what? Even in this past, like what? It's really weird thinking it's only been actually probably about 2 weeks since I found these broadcasts again after searching for them again for a couple years. Like the last time I did one of these was like give or take when I dropped my phone. Oh, there it goes. Can you still hear me? Okay, when I first moved to Vermont, but that was still a couple years ago, and I'm like, it's only been 2 weeks since I connected with everyone again, and just like I don't even think a full 2 weeks, and just in that time, the amount of things that have like changed and grew and progressed that probably would not have been the same any other way. And just, I am so grateful for, and I think I'll leave it at that, because if I go on a gratitude tangent with y'all, I don't know, I'll be here forever and somebody will have to shut me up.
That's good. Felicia,
I love you all. I know I'll pass it on to someone else for a while.
Wonderful. Thank you, Felicia, so much. Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Yeah, again, we can keep passing here. Like, again, there's a couple other stories that I kind of I'll share at some point. I mean, if you guys are interested, I don't know, want to hear about my romantic adventures and stuff like that, I don't know, it's up to you. But again, I share it only with the purpose of being able to share the lesson that I've learned from it. So if anybody else wants to be able to jump in any particular lessons, Kris, yeah, was that your hand up? Yeah, okay, cool. Pass it over to Kris. Kris, when you're ready, go right ahead, dude.
Yeah, so I wanted to like definitely bring up like like a lesson that I feel like I learned like through one of my past like relationships. But like before I even got into that, like I wanted to like I've like pulled up like kind of like this one like article that like Matt Kahn, who you were talking about, like who you brought up like into the discussion. And I feel like he really illustrates this concept of like kind of like our like twin flames and stuff like that we have in life. Like he illustrates it really well, so as to like kind of like redefine the term to make more sense of it, like because there is so much misconception kind of like around that. And so like I just wanted to read like just really briefly like what he says, because it plays into like the example that I'm going to be giving. So he basically says that, like a twin suggests a reflection, while a flame, like, so like the twin aspect, like a twin suggests a reflection, while a flame ignites and burns what is no longer needed for the journey ahead. A soul is your individuated expression of divinity, and a mate refers to the play of physical form, where our true eternal essence expresses as the truth of it all throughout a union of divine characters or counterparts. He says, like, for some, it may seem contrary to their known definitions, but as these terms are redefined, clarity, healing, and resolve can be delivered to those whose spiritual aspirations have been stifled by codependent relationships, cycles of grief, and emotional trauma. And so the essence of redefining these terms is not relying on external relationships, no matter how energetically charged they seem to be. So you may recognize each other as a gift that brings to life the soulmate of your highest self in form. So like like I think that touches upon just right there, like even like like so many of the things that were kind of discussed in terms of being able to see the lesson, like and seeing the relationship as a gift, like in in retrospect. And like it's like I think that whole aspect in of itself, like I've like done like a lot of thinking like just about that, like and being able to like kind of like it's just about like clearing trauma from our past, like that we really like carry with us, whether it be from past lives, like whether it be from like past experiences that we bring with us. Like it's kind of like redefining something that maybe in the past was like like a traumatic experience, and we looked at it as being something that was negative. And maybe it takes like a couple months, like maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 10 years for us to kind of like see the light within that darkness that we experienced. But ultimately we can see how like it was able to propel us towards more of our highest good. So like and what he like continues on in the article as saying with saying is that this invites us, like this recognition of being able to see ourselves more clearly through this mirror, through this twin, and this flame aspect of kind of like burning away what is no longer needed within us. Like I love that like kind of definition and like kind of way in which he explains that. It says that this like relationship invites us to discover true liberation, autonomy, and communion with the oneness of your own divine heart space. As you cultivate wholeness in yourself, you are able to draw toward you an external reality that matches your internal state of being, instead of a world that appears in contrast to your highest truth. And yeah, and he says like unquestionably everything you've known to be true up to this point will become the next dream you will be guided to awaken from. If not, it remains a prison of personal certainty that can inspire you to lash out, reject, or shut down toward those who are merely here to challenge the boundaries of interpretation. It says like the only thing we don't wake up from is love. Like it's like, well, love is a timeless gift of connection that relationships can inspire. It is but a sneak preview of the depth of harmony and perfection that completes you from within once it is fully integrated. And yeah, I won't like read the whole rest of his thing, but like I think it's just this idea of like being able to kind of like wake up from the aspect of like seeing the experience as being something that was negative, and being able to see it like really just as this like divine play, like and bringing you both to kind of like this greater sense of love for yourself. And it's like, so I'm going to give the example now, of like the relationship that I was in when I was in college. I was when I was going to school, and this took place kind of at like a really like intense time during my life too, where I was like really I had like a bunch of these incomplete like homework assignments and stuff like that, and all these papers that were like stacking up that I had to do. And a lot of it was because of the relationship that was kind of like, I was devoting so much of my time and energy into it, kind of going back to what Rachel was even like talking about, just like, kind of like, spending so much time like with someone that, you block out like everything else. Like it was kind of like, like that like was taking precedence over everything else, like, within my life. And like the hardest aspect of it, honestly, was just that, like one of the aspects of the relationship dynamic was that, like it was taking precedence over so many of these other things. But like from her perspective and what she would communicate to me was that I like wasn't spending enough time with her at all. So it was like literally like contrary to like everything that I was actually doing. So I was like literally like, like it's like, you don't love me, you're not like, what I mean, like always here for me. And it was like, what, like, are you kidding me? Like, what I mean? Like that's exactly like what I'm doing all the time. And it was just kind of like what the whole relationship brought me to see though was like, like apologizing for things that I wasn't sorry for. And like being told that I wasn't being enough when, I really knew within my heart that I was being enough. So it was like, reflecting back to me all these aspects of myself that, like I really, that it really helped to empower me after the situation. Cause it was like, yo, like I was just completely giving my power away to someone else and basically just kind of like allowing them to manipulate me and allowing that through being in the relationship myself. So, as much as like within that situation, I was kind of like, seeing like, or like, like right after it too, just seeing like, her as the toxic kind of person. It's kind of like at the same time, I was very much so like, involved within that. And, the hard thing too within the relationship too, that was that like part of what kept me in the relationship for so long, because it was like these kind of like things were happening throughout the relationship where it was like, at one point, like I woke up like in the morning with her and I like, put my hand on her in the wrong way. Like it was like in a completely not like bad way, but it triggered something within her from her traumatic past that like caused her to scream at me and tell me to like, get the hell out of her house, and that she was like gonna call the cops on me. You know what I mean? Like literally like screaming at me like for like, just for doing something that, I knew in my heart was out of love. But that was the thing. It was kind of like, just to hear that reaction that was just like, basically telling me that that's not what I was doing was so like jarring for me and stuff. And like, that's what made me maybe perceive it, in that kind of like way that was just really awful. But that, I guess that's what I'm trying to say though, is that like from that situation, what I was able to see though was that, or what kind of kept bringing me back like to being with her though, was that she would like apologize to me the next day and basically say that that was coming up from her past relationships and stuff like that. So I had compassion for that. So that's what made it such like a hard like thing, because it was basically just like, like I understood that that was kind of this trauma from the past, but it was just the thing that I needed to be there for me instead of being there for someone else. Like, it kind of like really like like um grinded me down to like really needing to see that like, it's like before I can really be there for someone else, like, I need to be there for me. So as much as like, I care about her, and as much as I can see that, like this is coming up from the trauma of her past, it's kind of like that trauma from her past is affecting me so much. So it's like, I needed to like remove myself from that situation, despite the fact that I could see through it, like with the clarity of like what it was. It was just like, putting me in jeopardy and like, putting my own needs at the expense of someone else's needs. And I think that like, that's what is the touchstone to so many relationships, is being able to get clear on what you actually want within your partner and what you actually need, instead of just kind of like, being attracted to someone else in this very physical way, where we kind of like sacrifice our own needs at the expense of like people pleasing and being there for someone else. And like, this is just something that has come up multiple times in my life, outside of romantic relationships, just putting other people's like, happiness before my own. And, so it's like, you can see how this is like, I feel like a lot of these relationship dynamics we draw into our beingness, like, you know, through these kind of patterns that we're working on outside of just romantic relationships. But it's like, you know, like not being enough, like, you know, like people pleasing, putting other people's needs before my own. It's like we can talk about these things and relate to the larger concept of like what these relationships are reflecting back to us at like a level of how are we, how are our relationship dynamics with everyone, how are we, like, you know, showing up for everyone? Are we showing up in a state of like lack, of not being enough, of people pleasing, you know, like, and it's like we can through these mirrors reflect, they reflect back to us, you know, these things that we really can work on that can bring us into the state of, you know, personal evolution and growth. So, you know, from that experience, I was able to really, like, you know, reclaim a lot of my power, I feel like, back, just because it was like that like really sharp reflection that was just kind of like, you need to like be here for you. And that's part of the reason why I actually like withdrew from being at school. And, you know, it brought me home here where I am now, you know. And it's kind of like I've been doing so many of these things more independently for myself, instead of just kind of like, you know, being at school more for my parents, you know what I mean, instead of like being at home for like me, because like I saw that that place wasn't really benefiting my highest good. So it's like, yeah, you know, that whole relationship and that whole situation really just brought me back into more of my power, and, you know, more of a yeah, and more into my purpose, like, you know, like here on earth. So yeah, I just wanted to share some of that, and thank you for allowing me to open up. And I know I talked for a while, but yeah.
Thank you, Kris, for sharing. I could definitely see a lot of people like nodding along and some comments in the chat and everything like that. And absolutely, again, you know, like I think one of the common themes that kind of comes up in relationships, both for men and for women, for male and for female, is this idea of either feeling like you're too much or feeling like you're not enough. You know, it's kind of like one of these things, and that's something where, again, you know, with the right partner, hopefully you don't have to feel that. But at the same time, usually it kind of comes even from childhood or something like that. You know, if like your dad was like, oh God, would you just stop for once? Like, you know, like that type of thing. And then it brings itself into the relationship. The relationships in themselves are literally this process of, you know, it's a journey of shared healing in a lot of ways. Not that it always is, like that's not always the focus of it, but in a lot of ways it is, because you can't come into a relationship without bringing your wounds into it. And hopefully in a healthy dynamic relationship, it gives you the opportunity to see where those wounds are and to really, again, to be able to hold space for it. And I think when it comes to, again, like the dynamics of a healthy relationship, what I've learned is that a lot of that healing takes place not so much because you're like literally like trying to heal someone, but you're literally just holding space for them to be able to clear their heart, to speak their truth, to move the energy, and to be in that space where they feel safe in doing that. And I think in a lot of ways, you know, we often carry shame related to our wounds. You know, we have a hard time kind of expressing them. And so what does it mean to kind of be with a partner who literally and genuinely is like, I love you for all of who you are. Like, I love you for your past. I love you for the things that you've gone through. I love you for your light and your shadow, right? Like, I think that level of maturity is incredibly powerful within a relationship, but that can only be brought into a relationship after you've kind of cultivated it within yourself. You know, otherwise it's just kind of like you're kind of like it's like it's not really like there's a genuineness that won't really fully be there. But yeah, a lot of other things to hit upon. Rachel, did you want to jump in? Is your hand like half up? Is that sure? Yeah. Okay. All right. There's a lot more. Obviously, I think a lot of us got a lot to share. Like I said, there's a couple other stories, but those can wait. Rachel, yeah, I'll pass it over to you then. Go ahead.
I'm just sensing that you really wanted us to touch on some healthy dynamics since we have been talking about our past experiences. Obviously, things not working out for most of us. That is really amazing, though, your experience with your current partner and what you shared there about just having that feeling of like a gravitational pull, like it was just like meant to be before, like, you know, like knowing things before it actually happened. That's really beautiful. And so you presented the question of what we might be looking for in a partner and what a healthy relationship might look like in our minds now. Especially like I can say, based on what I've been through, I've come to really seeing things as more of a not having expectations, not necessarily like coming up with a picture in my head of what the ideal relationship might look like, because I want to trust in the universe, trusting that by allowing myself to be open to the possibilities that the right person will come into my life naturally, without, like, the idea that when you stop looking for something, it comes back to you, or like you've lost something and the minute you stop looking, there it is. So I feel like that's kind of the outlook I'm having, as far as finding that healthy, like, meant to be kind of soul connection with somebody, where it just kind of happens, and it isn't like I need to find it. Because my past relationship I was talking about, we actually met on Tinder, and I felt that immediate connection. He was the only guy I ever went on a date with from Tinder, but he was totally a karmic relationship. Was looking, actively saying, I want to be in a relationship right now. I need to be in a relationship right now. And then I found him and I immediately attached to him. And so now I'm at this place where I'd rather not have any expectations, and kind of have absolute trust that everything that's happening is happening for my highest good, and that's what is meant for me will come to me. And not having a desire or need to control any other person other than myself. So I know we've been talking about this a lot, that it is all about ourselves first, but also the idea that you know I need to be my own person first before I can commit to another person. And really having this open communication. We've talked about that a lot too, that communication is really key. So for me, it really boils down to finding someone that I can talk to about anything, that I can trust, and realizing that, um, it's okay to not know what the future is going to look like, and just trust that it's unfolding exactly as it's meant to. um, you know so I hope that kind of helps a little bit with the healthy side of things. But
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I think it's interesting because we talk about this idea of like not having expectations, and again, for anybody else, just put your hand up if you guys are ready to go. Ash, I'll pass it to you. Again, I'll just say this real quick. But yeah, I think there is this idea of like, it's great to not have expectations, but at the same time, it's great to still have, like, I'm trying to think of the best word here, like kind of like virtues and containers, and like a mutual respect for each other. So in a way, like it's like there actually should be expectations within a relationship, but those expectations are something that like both people have agreed upon. And what's important is that if there needs to be a change in those expectations, then it should be communicated, right? Like that's kind of where it works. Because again, it's kind of like the one thing that I've experienced from being with relationships and stuff like that. For me, being in a relationship, I'll just say this real quick and I'll pass it to Ashley. For me, being in a relationship is actually very liberating, and it gives me a sense of freedom. And what I mean by this, and this may be a little bit different from something, and maybe, like even hearing it from a male might be a little bit new. But basically, like, when I'm not in a relationship and I'm kind of in that in-between stage, I'm kind of in that limbo stage sort of thing, like there is kind of like this tendency of, and this is more from younger me, this is from like years and years and years ago, so I wouldn't necessarily say it would still apply, but when I was younger, it was kind of like this stage of like, always kind of keeping my eyes open for who that next partner may or may not be, or like I'd be like out at social events and I'd kind of be like seeing things, or I'd be like interacting with people and I'd be like, oh, like, do I have a crush on them? Like do they like me? And there was always kind of like this if and or thing kind of playing out in my head. But what I found is that as I've kind of evolved and gotten into those like healthy relationships, ones where I like really feel that depth of commitment and that depth of like, yo, like I am devoted to you, like in that act of devotion, in that choice of devotion, it actually liberates me from having kind of like second thoughts about like still, again, kind of like in the wounded part of a culture where, again, you'll get like, there's like the meme, right, of like the guy who's like with a girl and he turns around and he's looking at the other girl. It's a very like kind of like cliche sort of mentality where it's like, oh, like if you're with a girl, like you might still like other girls and stuff like that. And not to say it's not impossible, but from my experience, when I'm really with a partner who I really, really love, I won't be in this place where I'm kind of finding my mind distracted by like, oh, like, you know, like, oh, like maybe I should ask that person out and maybe I should do this, as if I'm kind of like always like kind of like looking for something and kind of trying to like, it's like I'm on like a scavenger hunt or something like that. And so once I'm with that partner, I'm like, I don't have to look anymore. Like it's right here. Like, and because of that, it allows me to just like focus so much more on all the other things within my life, such as myself, and such as our relationship. There's a couple other things I was going to say, but I'll pass it over to Ashley for now. So Ashley, go right ahead. Anything else you want to add and jump right in. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on more the healthy side and communication with everything, and basically that in getting into a relationship and wanting it to follow in that healthy regard, there is still these working of these two aspects. Like with our partner, like there needs to be that energy of like you've explained, of being able to hold space where we feel safe, but we also have to do the work and acknowledge our traumas in which we might not feel safe, and be willing to just take a little bit of that step forward with them, and know that they're not there to absolve us of our trauma, to heal our trauma completely. And in the same essence, we can hold space for them, we can acknowledge their trauma, but we're not there to heal or to fix them either. Because then it starts getting into this dynamic of kind of victim and savior mode instead of being balanced. And like, I'll give a super personal, but I think it's really funny example. When I first met my boyfriend, now I had been in a string, one main one, and little bits of abusive relationships. And it was really hard for me to communicate, because I felt like the moment I was going to share how I felt, I was going to be persecuted in some way. I was terrified of the person being mad at me, and this like big old fight was just going to explode, even though that didn't exist. And so he was a person to give me safe space. And every time in the beginning, every time I needed to communicate my feelings, this is how I'd be. I'd have to put a blanket over my head, and I would have to talk about my feelings like that, because that's how I felt safe. And I couldn't be the person to be like, oh no, like, you know, my traumas are reacting, like they're gonna get mad at me, I can't say anything, hide, just go into this ball and don't reclaim your voice. Like, I had to take the steps, and slowly I withdrew the blanket, and now I can have normal conversation. And yeah, so it's kind of it's this dynamic balance of the divine masculine, and they both do the same elements really on either side, but just for this example, the divine masculine kind of giving that space of being the divine protector, the divine nurturer, and but the woman also standing in her divine femininity, her goddess power, to voice her opinion and say her needs, and for them to be respected within the whole dynamic. So yeah, none of the captain save a hoe, whether it's a girl or a guy, like it's just always going to turn into some type of toxic imbalance, because the only person we can truly save is ourselves. And that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, echoing that just from a little bit of just like not fully personal experience, but yeah, absolutely. Again, you know, like I know from like feedback that I've had with other partners that have gone through, you know, things that they've had trouble, you know, talking about, is that it's not always going to be this thing where it's like, oh, like they're expecting me to do something specific, but like literally if I can just be there, Like, just be there and be there. But this is the important thing, not just be there, but to literally be there in like a presence of like non-judgment and deep compassion, you know, and to like literally just kind of like help them communicate and help them feel safe, right? Because that's what you want a relationship to be in like that healthy dynamic. You want it to feel safe. You don't want it to feel like you're like walking on eggshells, or it's a little rocky, and every week you're like, what if type thing, you know. Once the communication is kind of solidified, and again, I think that comes as a result of maturity on both sides, then it gets to the point where like there's just like this depth of stability, and then from that stability, this is the exciting part, where you really get to take this like plunge into the depths of love. And like that's kind of like where I feel like I'm like kind of at this stage with like my personal relationships compared to the ones in the past. It was always kind of like they were there, but like it didn't go as deep as it could, in the sense that even then I didn't even know what to compare it to, you know. It just was what it was. But now I'm kind of at this point where it's like, yo, like we've been like working on our stuff for like quite a while. Like there's like, you know, there's like maturity on both sides here and everything like that. And then it's like, okay, yes, there's still things that are healing and things right now, but that's not necessarily the foreground. Therefore, like, what does it mean for us to like really dive into the depths of this love, right? And then it gets into this like really, again, this really this is where you start getting into this idea of like the alchemical marriage, you know. This is a very like Gnostic concept that really talks about this idea of like through the process of like the yin and the yang kind of coming together. And it can be for male female, or again for female female, and for male male, however you want to be able to work with those energies. But it just like it literally is this process where, again, even through like the cultivation of the sexual energy and moving into that sexual practice and everything like that, like the Gnostics, like the ancient practices of spirituality, literally talk about it being something that literally like awakens consciousness. Like it literally like moves energy up through the spine, it moves and it clears blockages and things like that. And again, so like on some level, it's like, yo, like, yeah, babe, like, let's like hang out and watch Netflix and stuff like that. That's cool. You can still do that and everything like that. But then on like another level, it's like, yo, like, let's like activate who we are as like multidimensional beings and creators, and just like artists, and just like, you know, just like this next level of kind of like the human experience that is possible. And again, I think that in itself is something to kind of be able to want in a relationship, to really like set that goal for yourself. Like it's okay, you know. Like some people just be like, oh, you know, I just want the company. But if you're like, yo, like I'm actually looking for someone to consciously evolve with, and to be able to be in that space to support and hold each other up to that accountability and everything like that, like that is a type of level of relationship that is needed right now. I think it's kind of like a microcosm of the macrocosm. And one thing, and I'll just say this here, and again, somebody put your hand up if whoever wants to go next, and we'll pass it over to you. Carly, we'll pass it over to you. The one thing that I love, and I'll just share this, and again, this is just kind of, you know, the romantic side, the Cancerian side of me, but I want to be able to share this for each and every single one of you, where it's literally this process of being able to understand that, like, when you love your partner, like specifically, like, yes, you can apply this to like individuals in a, you know, in a platonic way, but specifically, like when you are intimate with a partner in a very present way, not in a superficial way, but in a very present way, your love is literally healing the planet. Like your act of love is literally magic that is literally healing the collective consciousness of the planet. As crazy as that sounds, because it's just like, but we're just in our bedroom. Like what? Like no, like it's like nothing's happening in the bedroom that expands beyond. But on an energetic level, you are like anchoring in these like divine energies and this divine presence and this depth of love that, again, is something that will ignite within you, and it will kind of go out into the cosmos. But then again, it also allows it to be seen. And in a lot of ways, like even just for my personal relationship, like I'm quite private with my relationship, and I will continue to be quite private, but I understand. And for those of you who even saw, like you guys saw like a video that I put up on TikTok of my girlfriend skateboarding and stuff like that. No, and you guys were just like, oh my God, that was so adorable. And the reason why I put that up there was to be able to share some of the energy of what we have been cultivating, to be able to help like spark and inspire something in other people's heart, to just kind of like show a little bit of an example, to say like, this is what we can all have. This is something that can be strived toward. You can all have, again, these kind of like cuteness, adorable elements of love kind of blossoming in your life, and everything like that. So again, you know, I'm not trying to flaunt my relationship, but at the same time, I understand that if my relationship that I've put a lot of work into can in some ways be a beacon and an example of what is possible with inside the hearts of each and every single one of us, then understandably in that place, I understand that there is a purpose in allowing me to be able to share a little bit of my story, because I think when we have something to work towards, it can kind of spark a little bit of hope. And I feel that, again, like within each side of within all of us, again, like that is something that we are all worthy of, you know, and it is something that we are all here to be able to experience in our own unique ways. So anyways, sorry, I hope that wasn't too gushy and mushy and stuff like that, unless that's, you guys like the gushy and mushy. So Carly, I'll pass it over to you if you're ready. So pass it over to you, Carly. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I can relate to a lot of what you just said. It's like kind of hard to talk about because sometimes it feels like really overwhelming at times. Like when you're really deeply in love with someone, at least for me, like it's something like I've never experienced ever before. Like you just look in their eyes and you just feel like so overwhelmed with emotion and just like pure love. Like it's just amazing. And something that we really like to do together is like meditate together. Like at night we like lay in bed and we like just have our own like moment together and meditate. And I feel like that really brings us close together and allows us to connect like even deeper. And like it was really special when he proposed to me. We were like laying in bed meditating, and then when like the timer went off, he proposed like with my like song and everything. So it just made me feel like so like seen and like loved deeply on like a soul level. Like, and the way that he just encourages me to like be my better self and to like pursue the things that like set my soul on fire, and like I can do that for him as well. It's just a really amazing experience like I've never had before, like with anyone else. And like on a daily basis, we're both like saying to each other, like, do other people like experience this? Like, is this something that everybody gets to go through? Or are we just like so blessed and lucky to experience this ourselves? And I just hope that like every single being out there finds that type of love and lets it transform their life, basically. So to get really feely, yeah, it's just been amazing, and I'm just so grateful for him. And another lesson that I've learned, like by being in this relationship, is like when you're both growing in your own ways, sometimes like things come up that you have to overcome together and like learn how to problem solve. And that's going to come up in every relationship you go through, like especially healthy relationships. It's like you constantly have to evaluate like what is working for us and what we can change to like be even better. And like a big part of that for us has been like compromising and hearing like both of our sides and coming together to like make an agreement or like figuring out how we're going to get through it. And sometimes it's really hard to get through some things, but like ultimately, like I know I'm with the right person and like that we can get through anything that we want to, because we've done it before time and time again. And I just have like so much faith that like no matter what happens, that we'll be able to like work through whatever problems that we have. So yeah, I just hope I just wish that everybody in the world gets to feel the way that I feel about him and feels like so secure and safe and seen and loved. And I hope if all of you, if you've not experienced that, will very soon, and just enjoy every moment you have with that person, because you never know how long you have. And sometimes the moments can be really hard, but the good ones are totally worth living through the moments that are not as fun to live through. So yeah, thank you for you all listening and being here tonight.
Beautiful.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Carly, for sharing. And yeah, it's just wonderful just listening to your experience and hearing you share from the heart. Absolutely. So yeah, beautiful. There's one thing I was going to say just related to what Carly was saying, and then again we'll pass it over to whoever wants to, again, just put a hand up for whoever wants to go next, and we'll pass it over to you. One thing I was going to say, and this is actually a very, 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 very powerful idea, and I hope in me saying it really just kind of sparks something for you that allows you to kind of shift the paradigm, and I hope you carry this perception with you. When you're in a relationship, be it romantic or platonic, but specifically romantic, when you're with a partner, when you get into those moments where there may be disagreements and arguments, so to speak, instead of necessarily seeing it as you versus the other person, what you can do is you can actually choose to see it as you and your partner versus the situation. And when you understand it that way, instead of it just being it's us and we're just butting heads and everything like that, it allows you to kind of step back and just be okay, we're going through something together. Let's kind of see the bigger picture, look at things from both sides. Again, kind of, figure out compromises, listen, pay attention, really be present. And then knowing that that situation is literally there for you to be able to move through it together. And again, kind of with what Carly is talking about, Carly is, again, talking about this beautiful relationship that she has cultivated over the years, which those relationships, they don't just pop up and then it's oh my goodness, it's a fairy tale and everything's perfect and everything like that. The best relationships come as a result of you going through those challenges together, and then eventually it gets to the point where both of you are just yo, we've gone through enough at this point that I know we can go through anything. And it just gives you this utmost strength. And again, and with that kind of knowing, it allows you to really drop into this deep space of devotion, And this is where, again, I think in a lot of ways in society, it's men have kind of been conditioned, which is a part of our own healing. Men have a lot of healing to do and everything like that, where they have a hard time kind of dropping into this space of loyalty and devotion and things like that, because again, I think it takes a degree of maturity, and I think for a lot of men, especially if they're kind of young and kind of in that bachelor lifestyle and things like that, they're probably in some ways, it's they're afraid to give up the what ifs, and they're afraid to give up the kind of the superficial lifestyle, and at the same time they're probably afraid to let someone even get that close to them, it's for them to actually be seen when they take the armor off. But the one thing that I'll say here that I think is incredibly beautiful is to understand that, again, on a cosmic level, when you get into these deep relationships, what I love to be able to perceive them as is not even just so much as oh, okay, here's me with my partner. It's literally yo, here is us as the universe, making love, in love. It is literally the universe incarnated into physical form, literally loving one another. And the deeper part of that is literally for your entire relationship to almost be an act of worship. And I say this in a very particular way, where it's kind of almost it's what does it feel like for you know, like for two people to actively worship each other, not from a place of kind of like superficiality or anything, but literally, you know, each and every single morning to kind of like honor your partner like as a goddess, or to honor, again, like your male partner or whatever, to honor them like a king, to treat them like a queen type thing, you know, because we are worthy of that. We are absolutely worthy of that. And I think some people would almost have like a little bit of resistance because that might even be a little bit outside of their paradigm. But I think after the relationship is developed and you're kind of at that place of maturity, I think it's incredibly powerful for both partners to actively kind of like worship each other, and not in like, again, not in like this egoic way where it's like, oh, praise, 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 but at the same time it's more like celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. And so what does it feel like when you literally celebrate your partner for who they are each and every single day? And again, it just continues to uplift. Like I've said this to my partner, and again, like, put your seatbelt on. It's gonna get gushy, mushy. I don't know what the word is here. But anyways, I say this to them every now and then, where I'm just like, you know, like we'll spend time together, and I'll just be like, yep, like I just like fell in love with you a little bit more today. Like just like literally just a little bit more today. And why do I say that? Like, I'm not making that up. It's because I got to see a little bit more of them. I got to meet a little bit more of them. Every single day you go through these experiences. It's not like it's just like you're just the same person and then that's it. You know, it's like every single day, you know, we'll have a new conversation, and I'll learn something new about them. We'll go through an experience. I'll see another side of them or something like that. Or I'll be proud of them, or they'll skateboard down their first hill or something like that. Like in that TikTok video, that's literally them going down their first hill on a skateboard and stuff like that. All these like little like cute moments and stuff. But again, you know, little things like that, when you really just allow yourself to be, again, like in this place where you're open to kind of like seeing it from that perspective, it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly transformational. It's such a sacred gift. And again, you know, I cherish that gift, and I just do my best to be able to honor it each and every day without ever taking it for granted. You know, that's a big part of the lesson as well. But yeah, I hope that idea of, again, kind of what I said, where it's, instead of thinking of it as like you versus your partner, think of it as you and your partner versus the situation when it comes to arguments. And then again, that idea of like, what would it feel like to really celebrate and worship another person each and every single day, you know, to kind of like really bring it to that like next degree of consciousness and stuff like that. What does that feel like? What does that look like, sort of thing? So anyways, who wants to jump in next? Dani, did you want to go? I just know you haven't said anything in a while. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything like that. No? Okay. Anybody else want to jump in? Well, I'll say here, we're going to get close to wrapping it up, so that we're in like the last home stretch. So even if there's any sort of like closing thoughts that you guys want to add, that's totally fine. I don't want us to, I mean, I'm sure we could stick around for like 10 hours talking about this, just swapping stories, but we'll wrap it up literally within probably the next 25 minutes. So Felicia, is your hand up? Is that yes? Okay. All right, Felicia, I'll pass it over to you. When you're ready, Felicia, go right ahead.
Aha. Okay. I don't really know how to figure out the words to kind of lead into it, but something that came to me and something during all of that chat during the past little bit, especially the past few minutes, and something I want to definitely share. And I picked up the crystal just a moment ago, the one crystal I have that belonged to the late friend I keep talking about, and just these things keep hitting home with, and I just want to share a memory with y'all that like I just related to the last little bit about and like again, I don't really know how to tie it all together, but either way, I think y'all would still appreciate this little story and tidbit. How I'll never forget how for years I was told that people love that I talked a lot and this, that, the other thing, and then all of a sudden when I had like middle school and I was a teenager and people would like hate me for it and like stop talking to me or just like make fun of me, all sorts of stuff. And I'll never forget that this person, and this was like, oh man, like a month after I met him, like 10 years ago, sitting on his dad's porch and him sitting there, and I was talking and I was apologizing for talking too much. And it's a small thing, but it's this moment that like I can remember every detail of, and it hasn't left me. And it's like healed me more and more throughout time of him telling me like, you know, in a like yelling at me in a loving way to stop apologizing for talking so much, for talking too much, and he just told me how much he loved to hear me talk. And I'm like, who are you? What's going on here? Like, it was just this, like, so simple, but such a transformative thing, both then and then even more so as the years went on. And then, like, even more so, like, as time goes on after he passed, and, you know, tying into the whole spirit guide bit with him, and, you know, greater destiny path. And it's something that sometimes I can go on specific things about, but when we're talking about both this subjects and anything like that, it's kind of hard to not ramble about it. I don't know. And I'm really grateful for all your patience with that, with both my mind space lately and my particular way that dealing with that makes it even, like, more scattered, especially because I haven't been able to deal with the grief as I know I you know, would be more healthy, but, you know, not always having that space. It's hard. And I'll leave y'all with this one. And I actually made one specifically in his honor, which is really cool. And actually I should share this with the team chat on the Discord. That would be really awesome. It's called a unilome. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. And it's like I believe a Buddhist thing, like a symbol where it basically, depending on which way you talk about it, symbolizes that the path to whether it be grief or enlightenment isn't straight. Pardon me. It's not straight, and it's swirly. Sometimes it's straight for a while, and then you zig and you zag, and that path is never just one straight line. And yeah, I think I'll leave that there, and just shoot love lasers at all of you. Mwah!
Thank you, Felicia. Love
Use
lasers.
my crystal, shooting the love lasers.
Yes, love lasers are on target. Pew pew. So beautiful, awesome. Thank you, Felicia. Awesome. All right, team. Again, anybody else just want to go next? Give me put your hands up in the air, and we'll put. Is that Ashley? Yeah. Okay. All right, Ashley, go right ahead.
I just wanted to mention that. How do I put this? That in some situations where we feel like we've developed healthy patterns and healthy relationships and a sort of balanced dynamic, it's okay to get to a point where sometimes, like, love isn't enough. In that regard, I mean that your life paths start to go different ways. Maybe you realize that your highest of values and morals actually maybe don't match up in the way that you want or you desire, and that maybe as you develop as a person, certain attributes of lives and values become more important and vital to a relationship that you need. And perhaps you may try and cultivate it, and there's some times where there's so much love and still things don't stay forever. And sorry, it's because I'm on YouTube as well. And that's I was hearing myself echo, and like, that's okay, because I remember all the time being young and confused, like, but I'm in love, like, how could this not work out? I'm in love, this is supposed to be forever. And sometimes people enter our lives for just a period of time to serve in that love and to give us something that we need in that moment, but that doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And being able to make peace with that, it can be a hard process, but just acknowledging that sometimes that occurs, it's okay, and you'll be okay. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said, Ashley. Absolutely. Cool. I'll just adding on that, I'm gonna just go back to a quick little story that I had to share from a lesson that I've learned, and then again, somebody just put their hand up if they want to go next, and we'll pass it over to you. What I was gonna say is In terms of I'll share this first. There's one relationship that I had, and the breakup on it was very, very educational in various different degrees. One of the things that I learned through that relationship was this idea that sometimes you will not always receive closure. And that's something that you kind of you have to almost learn to bite that bullet. It's not really a fun thing, but at the same time, you kind of have to be able to accept it. And so in this relationship, it was basically something where the partner basically just kind of like said one day, it was just like, okay, like ride's over, relationship is done, like we're not together anymore. And it was very much kind of like this, you know, like whoa, like a little bit of a shock to it. And then at the same time, there wasn't really like a post-action report. You know, it was just kind of like can you tell me why, sort of thing. And they were just kind of, you know, like very quiet about it. And then in the past, you know, a past version of myself probably would have been like, you know, like really bothered by that, and it would have kept messaging them when I shouldn't have messaged them and stuff like that. And instead, at that point, I just kind of had to really just kind of like respect where they were at, and then understand that if there was more that they wanted to tell me, that they would tell me. But at the same time, just to kind of like honor them for being where they are. And then out of that, I learned this again, this idea of like, whoa, you know, like I really value the idea of like people being able to like communicate their emotions really clearly. And so there was a little bit of a separation between the maturity of us, where they were just at a point where, you know, like communicating their emotions was just not something that they were too familiar with. And we had actually talked about this in previously. It wasn't something that I was assuming. Like it was literally something where they're like, yeah, you know, like I have a hard time communicating my emotions. And so being understanding of that, again, it was kind of like this lesson where I didn't really get like the full, you know, vision of why the relationship fully ended. It kind of came down like way later. It almost came like, you know, like half a year later, so to speak. But even still, within that process of heartbreak, that was one of the most transformational things that I went through. And it took support, you know, like I had a friend who I was able to talk to on the phone, and he was a few years older, and he kind of gave me some advice. And in that moment of kind of going through the heartbreak, it was this very powerful opportunity to be able to teach myself how to be able to heal in that moment. And one of the best things that I can recommend for healing through heartbreak is obviously, you know, to be able to like feel the feels and kind of like sit with things. But then a big part of it is actually like the physical movement. Like as silly as that sounds, like that feeling of actual like heartbreak, that like chakra implosion feeling and stuff like that, if you just sit there, like it just kind of festers. And for those people who have, you know, we've all gone through heartbreak, you know what that feeling is. It's actually physical. It's actually visceral. And so that's where like when I was feeling myself, you know, I get into those moments where like my shoulders would hunch and I would just kind of like physically just kind of like lean over and stuff like that. I would literally have to remind myself to kind of like open up my chest, literally like, you know, change my posture, literally go for a walk, focus on exercising and things like that. And it really brought me into this new level of mindfulness, even in relation to my breath. Like that was one of the things he was telling me. He was like your breath will guide you. Your breath will guide you through anything, right? And so in this circumstance, it really just was this opportunity of I have two choices, you know, like I can sit and just kind of fester for as long as I want, or I can kind of extract the lessons that I need to and then start focusing on kind of like healing myself and moving towards the future type thing. And it really was with this perspective, and this was again something that he was kind of teaching me, where basically again, you know, and I say this for everyone, where it's like when you go through those relationships, sometimes it can feel where you're just like you're holding on to the past and you're just like, oh, I thought that was the one, that was going to be great. And now you go through this grief process of like, you know, like the future that you once thought was before you is suddenly not there, and that's very challenging to deal with. But at the same time, the other perspective was this idea of understanding that there's like literally a party with your name on it, like in the future. And the best thing that you can do is what I was talking about earlier, is to literally like work on yourself, to quote unquote raise your vibration, to take care of yourself. And then like as you do this, like that, you will arrive like ready for that party. You will arrive at that next circumstance. You will arrive at those gifts. So again, it's kind of going back to this idea that, you know, inherently the experiences themselves, they're neutral. They're not necessarily good or bad. It's how you choose to see it. And I think when you evolve through relationships and stuff like that over time, Whereas in the past, you know, a certain heartbreak, it might have been something that you were kind of like in there for like months and months and months, and that's understandable and no shame. But I think as you kind of gain experience, at least for myself, eventually, you know, like for me, like that heartbreak, I was kind of like transitioning out of it, and it only like, I would say, you know, maybe like a few weeks, which is pretty good, all things considered, for me to kind of like get back onto my horse, so to speak, or whatever, and to really start moving forward. And this is the other part of the story, and I'll just share this here. And again, somebody put their hand up for whoever wants to talk next. But again, we'll get, okay, Dani, and we'll get close to wrapping it up. The big lesson for me actually came a little bit after our relationship ended. So our relationship ended, and then not long afterwards, they actually started dating a close friend of mine. And later on, like literally maybe just like a month later, so to speak, like after we had broken up, there was this dance event that was happening in our city. And in my mind, I knew that they were going to be there. And then there was a part of my mind that was just like, oh, like, I don't want to go. Like, if they're going to be there, I don't want to go, because I know if I go, it will make me feel weird. It will be uncomfortable, and it'll just be hard. And why would I go there if it's just going to hurt myself, sort of thing. But the other perspective was understanding that in the midst of that discomfort, that potential discomfort, there was actually a gift. There was a treasure, and it was all relative on how I chose to show up to that moment. So what I actually did, instead of just kind of reacting on my impulse of like, oh damn, like I really wanted to go to that party, but if they're gonna be there, then I don't want to be there. You know, I'm sure we've all probably had that. Like, I don't want to be hanging out with my ex while they watch them like make out with their new boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, that's like not a fun feeling at all. But then at the same time, I was kind of going through this process where it was like, you know what? I'm going to go to this dance party, and I'm not going there for them. I'm going there for me. Like, I'm literally going there for me, regardless. And maybe they won't even show up. I don't even know, right? But then I went there, and I literally just kind of like started dancing. And I just showed up on my own, right? And I just like started dancing, and I was just kind of like minding my own business. And then eventually, like, they actually showed up. And then, like, instead of like an old version of me and being like, oh fuck, like, oh no, and then like running out of the club or something like that, instead I just allowed myself to really bring myself to this place where I'm like, again, kind of going back to that deep love that I was talking about earlier, where I was just legitimately, I was just like, yo, like, I'm happy for both of you. I'm happy for both of you, and I'm able to be happy for both of you because I know in my mind, my journey is still continuing. You know, like, I'm not looking back to the past. I'm actually looking forward to the future. So yeah, I might reminisce a little bit and remember the good old days when her and I used to be together and everything like that. But at the same time, it's really honoring the fact that both of these people are still my friends, and ultimately I want the best for both of them, and acknowledging the fact that like they made a good couple, and if anything, they made a better couple than me and her, sort of thing. And so literally the night kind of continued, and it literally involved us like dancing together, and like the three of us dancing together, and it was, again, it was just like three friends dancing on the dance floor. And I think honestly, from what I've experienced, one of the most transferable ways to be able to get over heartbreak is to be able to like get on the dance floor with your past partner and possibly their new partner and something like that, where it's not about the relationship. It's literally like, yo, like, we're just humans on a dance floor, and we're just, you know, souls on a journey. And when you can really approach it from this level, it was incredibly healing, incredibly transformational, and I was so proud of myself to be able to do that. Because again, the impulse in me was to completely avoid that situation because it was difficult, because it was uncomfortable. But I faced the uncomfortableness. I went into it with intention. I went into it because I was doing it for myself, and it actually became this very liberating and healing experience. And then out of that, the night kind of ended with like me and them just kind of like, we were out front for a little bit, you know, just kind of like one of them, the boyfriend was out there just for a cigarette, and we were just kind of out there for a little bit. And I was like, you know, I had a few drinks, but I was literally just like speaking to that moment, and it's just like, hey, like, you guys, like, I just want to let you know that like I'm really happy for you, and I really love you both. And they were just like, oh, like, Brendon, like, that means so much. And especially for her, right? Because I think for her, like, she was actually a little bit worried about my feelings, right? She was like, oh man, this like, you know, she probably like felt like, she's like, oh man, it probably hurts Brendon to be able to see us together. But then for me to kind of like openly just express the fact that I still cared about them and everything like that was like super transformational for all of us, literally in that moment, where it just kind of like released my like grip on kind of like the past, while kind of like just celebrating the future, celebrating them as friends. And then again, you know, kind of like time unfolded, and lo and behold, you know, I'm right where I need to be, where I am, even though at the moment, like, I thought that might have been, like, it's weird how in the moment we're in a relationship, we're like, this is the one, this is the one, this is the one, and then in retrospect it's not the one, and we're just like, oh, okay, it's probably better that it wasn't the one in retrospect. And then you actually find another one, you're like, oh, now universe, now I get it, right? So it's sometimes it's not until you're out of it that you realize again why it didn't work the way it did, because there was something else that was more in alignment for your soul's purpose, so to speak. But anyways, just on that, and I'll pass over to Dani, I encourage you to kind of like find those moments of self-empowerment where you can step into those difficult situations, where you can really see the human in the other person and just support them and love them in a different way, you know, to love them in a way that is, again, just wanting the best for them, whether or not that even involves you. And when you let go of that, you give yourself permission to kind of like really begin to heal in a very, very powerful way. So and I'm grateful for it. Like I'm a better person because I went through that experience, and I look back and I'm like, yo, like I'm proud that I did that. Like I was really proud that I did that, because it wasn't easy, but I'm grateful I did it. So Dani, I'll pass it over to you. Go right ahead.
Somewhat on the same topic, when I went through my awakening soon after, I felt this need to text my ex because of I hadn't talked to them pretty much since we broke up. And in that, I wanted to forgive them and forgive myself. And I didn't care if they replied or not. I just wanted to put everything out at the table. And how I ended my message was saying, you know, I really hope you are loving yourself. And I hope that you're giving yourself the support, because I had recently found love for myself and support for myself, and realizing how transformational that had been in my life, and realizing that in that relationship, both of us were in a very unhealthy place. I just wanted what was best for her. And once I could fully express that, I don't know if she necessarily received that in the same way I was giving it, but I wanted to at least plant that seed, because for me, that was a way of showing her that like there was no animosity that I had towards her or myself in that situation. I'm very grateful to have been in that. And one of the main things that I learned from that relationship is that you have to be responsible for your own emotional well-being. The moment you're telling your partner, you know, like, you complete me and I would die without you, I don't know how I'd live without you, you become, again, like dependent on them for your happiness. But when you take accountability for yourself and saying, okay, I'm gonna love myself and give myself the emotional support that I can, and then you get to be a bonus, you get to be a person that helps me in my growth and helps me express my truth, and we get to in a way practice that together. That's when you get to do a lot of positive growth. And even in a situation where it's not healthy, you can, you know, learn for the future what you want to cultivate in another relationship. And so yeah, it's just interesting, because even though she didn't necessarily reciprocate that she forgave me or that she forgave herself, it was still a very healing moment. And I think I gave her some information that at least in the future, if she does look at it, she could read what I sent her and understand that I was coming from a place of love and a place of support. Whereas in the past, I may have had some more selfish actions and just wanting her to heal me and her to fix me in a sense, and for me to fix her. Like, we just wanted to fix each other when that wasn't necessarily what was healthy. But I learned from that situation, and I'm really grateful for that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dani, for sharing. And again, I think there's something so powerful to be able to have that forgiveness for ourselves and for others as well. I'll just say this real quick, and again, we're gonna get closer. Again, just kind of like closing thoughts or anything else you guys feel you want to bring to the roundtable, please. We'll pass it over to Erica in a second. One of the things, again, when it comes to relationships that I've learned over the years is sometimes we will go through relationships and we will do things where we'll see sides of ourselves that are not pretty. We will see sides of ourselves where we'll do things, and it will give us a choice. It will give us a choice to either say, like, do you want to keep doing this, or do you want to change? Do you want to leave this in the past, or do you want to bring it with you? And so, like, I can say, like, even from my own experience in the past, like, there were times, like, in my past This is quite a whiles back in my past, and I'm literally just sharing this to be able to share like the lessons that I learned from it, where I experienced what it was like for my heart to lead me in a place where I did not show like the utmost virtue of loyalty. Meaning that there were some actions that were not fully in alignment with the promise of loyalty that I had shared with my partner. And yet, as a result of seeing me show up in that, and as a result of me seeing like the ramifications of that and seeing the hurt that it caused, I also had to look deeply within myself. And now, as a result, like in retrospect, am I glad that it happened? Not necessarily, but at the same time, I am grateful for the lesson and the clarity that I learned from it, where basically as a result of that allowed me to see myself where I'm just like, yeah, like I'm not doing that again. Like I've done that once. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. And, you know, I got it out of my system or something like that. Because sometimes we do. Like, we literally have to see the shadow part of ourselves to be able to kind of, like, decide whether or not, like, we want to bring it with us, so to speak. But then again, moving forward, it's, like, something where it's, like, now it's just, like the concept of like loyalty and everything like that is like so solidified into my very being, but that would not have happened unless I had experienced the opposite of it. And so I think in times we really have to honor this within ourselves, is that we will, as we mature, we will go through relationships. We will do things that aren't pretty. We will do things that are kind of a little shitty. We will do things that are maybe a little bit, again, you know, kind of like selfish or unbalanced and this and this and this and this. But as long as we're conscious, we get the opportunity to be able to learn. And if we don't consciously extract the lessons, then we're bound to repeat them, evidently. And so, yeah, again, I think it's a powerful thing to be able to consciously learn from the relationships to the best of our ability, and to be able to forgive ourselves as we go. And there's something else I was gonna hit upon, but I'll wait for it to come back, and I'll pass it to Erica now. So, Erica, if you're ready, we'll pass it over to you. So, when you're ready, Erica, go ahead.
Okay. Can you all hear me okay? Sounds good? Okay. I don't want to talk too much about my past relationships, but I did recently go through some heartbreak. My heart is pounding right now. um, I tend to fall in love very easily, and I have tended to be quite intense in relationships. I realized something quite deep about myself recently, that was rooted in past trauma. Um, I tend to get very sexually intense with somebody quickly, and it's like if I make a move, I get this feeling like it's kind of a now or never type thing, and I've not been in relationships that have lasted. Um, so I'm not really sure if I've ever really been in a healthy relationship genuinely. So right now, like, I am at a space where like I'm just focusing on self-love, healing from this. Like I just dated somebody who ghosted me without any explanation, and I had no closure. Told him I was in love with him, which scared him away. Um, and so I did what Dani did, send a bunch of messages to him, and just had to leave it at that. The lesson I learned from that is that sometimes when you love someone, it means you just have to totally let them go. Yeah. So I'm still working through it. Just I'm in a space where I've been focusing on myself. Um, I also do want to talk a bit about polyamory. I think if you're in a space where you can be honest and clear, direct right from the start, right from the get-go, and you are both looking for similar kinds of things, I don't think that there would be such a thing as cheating on someone. I know we talked about that before. I've been making notes, so just wanted to bring that up. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing. And
You're welcome.
and again, you know, just like for everybody here, just sending everybody here just like so much love and strength for whatever you need right now, because again, you know, it's here for you. You're growing through it. You're becoming stronger as a result of it, stronger and softer at the same time. And again, you know, at the end of the day, the most important relationship is the relationship that we have with ourselves. So, you know, like really being able to develop that each and every day is the true gift. Absolutely. So no, thank you, Erica, for sharing. So cool.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, again, team, I appreciate everybody just adding their voice to this conversation, and we're going to get close to wrapping it up. So anybody just going around, like any closing thoughts or anything else that they want to be able to bring to the topic? And again, you know, like in talking about the dynamics of healthy relationships. Is that Felicia waving? Yeah. Okay. And talking about, again, you know, the dynamics of healthy relationship, like absolutely clear communication, the power of holding space. One of the things that I like is, again, you know, even just like the power of like surprise and stuff like that, like for your partners and things, you know, just to be able to kind of like do things in a way that's really showing a reflection of the fact that you've been listening, and you kind of like understand like the little things that they might like, and then just finding ways to surprise them. Or anyways, there's so many things to be able to do within a relationship that can just kind of like help it evolve. And again, you know, I like to see it as just kind of like two people going on a journey together, two people going on an adventure together, and there'll be mountains and there will be ups and downs, but when you have someone there who you know is like someone who shares like a mutual devotion, it's an incredibly powerful thing. And again, I'm still at a point where even in the midst of my experience, I'm still learning. And I think that's what relationships bring us. They bring us this beautiful gift of being able to learn a little bit more each and every single day, both about ourselves, about the person, about the world, about how to be able to love more deeply each and every single day. And I think that is the journey all of us are on, is just spiritually as humans continuing to learn how to love more deeply. And when we learn how to love deeply, we also learn how to share that love with the world as well. So it leads by example. Felicia, I'll pass it over to you, and then again we'll just get close to wrapping it up here. So Felicia, when you're ready, go right ahead.
So real quick question, because I have like elephant meat short-term memory loss, etc. Do you remember the general subject of what oh my god, and now I could like paint you her face, but I can't remember their name. The person who was just talking.
For Erica?
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Erica. Again, elephant memory meets short-term memory loss. I'm trying to remember the general subject because I like to call it, maybe this might help some people. I like to call it a hamster wheel. When my brain's going so quickly, I completely forget like the main thing I was talking about short-term was.
Yeah.
And I had something I wanted to say so bad, and then like halfway through, I completely forgot what I was trying to say.
Not to summarize for Erica, but
it's okay.
It was about loving intensely at the start, dealing with a breakup, a person ghosting, and then just focusing on being able to move forward from there. That was kind of the gist of it, just to summarize. Was that?
I think it might have been possibly a more specific thing. I'm so I apologize.
No problem.
I got so excited, and I'm like, but
if you want to take a moment to sit with it.
You know, I don't know. Oh man, it's one of those things. I feel like even if I sat with it, I might like maybe I'd remember, maybe I won't. But I feel like I like to go and watch back through the broadcast. I'll watch it and then be like, oh. That's it. And then I'll go and like I'll get in the Discord and be like, so guys, remember when I blanked out? Here's the story. And this is me typing. I do that sometimes. I'm like, also I finally made it outside. It stopped raining.
Beautiful.
There we go. I'll leave y'all with that because I can't remember what I was saying.
Okay.
And, maybe you can see my gargoyle. Nope, that's not it. There he is.
Cool.
See him? Gargoyle my pride flag.
Awesome. All right, Felicia. Thank you. Good vibes. Awesome. All right. Okay. Well, again, we'll just kind of keep going here. So anybody else who wants to, is Ashley? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ashley, and then whoever else is next. Yeah. Go for it, Ashley.
I don't know why this didn't come to mind before, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the love languages. I think it's so incredibly important to understand that we all express love differently. And if there's not an awareness behind that, sometimes it can feel like our partner isn't loving us, but truly it's probably just they're not loving us in the way that we desire or want or feel like we need. But there is, I feel like there is a shift in perspective when you understand, oh, my partner's not being rude or mean or cold or any of those things. This is how they love, and when I can see that, I can be more compassionate to that. And if I can remember them all, it's touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and time spent together. And yeah, to really getting to know that, especially early on in a relationship, I think is just super, super vital to maintain that balanced dynamic. Mine is touch. And if someone can't love me like they're holding a baby, like it's probably not gonna work. And like that's okay. And yeah, that's know your love language and get to know your partners. And if they don't match up, that's okay. You can still create a synergistic balance between one another where you figure out how to serve each other's needs in that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great topic. And again, for those of you who are looking to, just learn a bit deeper on that, yeah, just run a Google search on love languages and you'll find a little bit more about that. And it might help you just kind of like understand a little bit more about yourself. And I mean, and even for myself, I think that's like something that like I'm still learning. Like I think for me, like words of affirmation is definitely, I mean, I think it's natural that we kind of like have all of them in some ways, but it's just a matter of like which ones we might gravitate more towards. So again, words of affirmation. So like telling your partner that you support them, or again, like wanting to be able to hear that. That's kind of a thing that I know for like Cancerians, where it's just like, oh, just tell me that I'm special or something like that. Just reaffirm that I exist. That's all, please. That's all I need to hear. But again, acts of service could be, like cooking food for them, or again, getting them a gift, or, like helping them with the chores and the laundry or things like that. Physical gifts. This is what I was talking about, like the idea of like being able to surprise them. I love being able to surprise my partner, especially one of the things that I made for them was like this beautiful piece of art. I'll show it to you guys right now, just because I think it'll make you go, "Aw." 1 second, it's like right here. This is pretty special. This is something that nobody else has seen this other than her and me, obviously. But here, this is a picture that I drew. So, aww, you can see it's like cute and stuff like that, and it's like literally like kind of like the circles, like the red and the blue, and then this is like kind of purple and stuff like that. And it was kind of inspired by like another picture, and then I just kind of like rendered it to kind of look like us, sort of thing. I've got like an elf ear in there. I don't know if you can see that. That's because I do have an elf ear, but anyways. But yeah, creating like a gift like that, again, like when you do something like that, like that's incredibly powerful, because it's like you're like encoding your gift into a physical object, and then it like kind of like expresses something that's almost beyond words. And then again, quality time I think is really important for a lot of people. Some people maybe not so much if they're very busy and everything like that. And again, I think it's a very special thing to like literally just be with your partner and to be in those moments where you're just like talking about nothing just for like hours and hours on end. Like those moments where you're just like on the phone for 5 hours just talking, like those are great. And then of course, yeah, like physical touch, and for me, like absolutely physical touch is also an important one. So again, I think understanding that, I think each of us kind of like have aspects of all of them, but maybe in some ways we might gravitate towards some more than others, and absolutely just being able to understand maybe the needs of your partner and stuff. And again, and I think that's an important thing, is even for us as individuals, I think at times we've kind of been conditioned into this idea of thinking that it's wrong for us to be able to express our needs. That I think for a healthy relationship to work, I think it's important to acknowledge what our needs are and to be able to communicate them and to be able to honor, like, again, you know, kind of like where like our like the healthy needs and everything like that. And I know, like, even in the past, like, that was something where, yeah, like, that was like an issue that came up in a past relationship where it was like a long distance relationship, and my girlfriend was just kind of like in this in a place where there was just kind of a little bit of a disconnect, and it's like we weren't communicating as well as we could have been, and her needs weren't getting met of literally just kind of like always being there as much as she needed to and everything like that. But again, just the process of being able to communicate is the way to be able to like step towards making sure that everybody else is being seen, heard, felt, acknowledged, and loved. So we'll again get close to wrapping up here. How many? We still got everybody here. So closing thoughts from everybody here, and then we'll just finish it off with a little meditation. Rachel, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, you already touched on a lot of what I was going to say, 'cause, just in response to Ashley bringing up the love language. I feel like those are the five, but I feel like there probably is more outside of that. Like, we all, as it is, like, we all love differently. So like, even to like put a box around it and say you have to subscribe to one or more of these five and that there isn't anything else outside of that, I feel like we all do have our unique experiences and perceptions of things. I think it was important to mention, like, it's important to have that synergistic relationship where you might not necessarily have the same love language as your partner or partners, but the idea that you can um, give them the love that they need, and receive the love that they're willing to give you, and vice versa. So like, being able to give the love that will benefit them while also um, receiving the love that they're most able to give. So it is kind of like finding that fine line, that balance between the differences you might have. um, I kind of firmly believe that no matter the differences, there's always room for growth and common ground. So even having differences is a beautiful opportunity to learn new lessons, as we were talking about. Like, every opportunity, every experience is a lesson in some way, and whether that relationship is meant to play out long term, short term. I mean, I like to just, as I said before, trust in the process, trust that I'm going exactly where I'm meant to go, and trust my gut, trust my feelings. Feelings are big for me. And that was actually, not to get into too much here again, but that was actually one of the problems in my last relationship, was being so attached to the idea of loving so much, loving so deeply. I feel like Ashley brought this up earlier, actually, too. Um, like, being so attached to the idea of, like, I love them unconditionally, I love them so much, and like, all of that other stuff doesn't matter. But really, like, realizing that no matter how much you love someone, if you're not being your best self, if you're not helping each other be your best selves, if you're not happy, then it isn't the relationship for you, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much love there is. So for me, it was being complacent in my relationship and feeling um, like I did have all this love, and the love languages was actually a problem for us towards the end, where I felt like just spending time together was enough, and just like having that connection. And I wanted touch, and at the beginning of the relationship, we cuddled all the time, and he kind of withdrew that like for the last like year or two. Or, well, we were only together for 2 years, but I feel like the last like year and a half, it was like no more cuddles. And he would always say it was because he was too hot and didn't want to like have me like cling to him like a little like koala or whatever. um, so um so that was an issue for me, because I felt like I wasn't getting the physical touch I wanted, and he was very much um, saying that he was doing all these things for me, giving me rides, giving me things, buying me things, and how I wasn't doing anything for him, and that I never did anything for him. So that was a big disparity. So I feel like it is very important to be aware of those kinds of things, and understand that it is a two-way dynamic, that it isn't just all about us, it's about the other person too. So yeah, thank you for bringing up the love languages, Ashley. That was really, I think, a really good topic to bring up and really important to touch on in the end here. And I guess I'll say good night. Rest well, everyone. Sweet dreams. It was so great to be here with you all, and I love you all so much. Sending so much good vibes, healing vibes, and all the love, of course.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. All right. So again, we'll just kind of move through swiftly with any closing thoughts, passing it over to Kris, and anybody else who wants to go after that, just let me know. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you again so much for, holding this space. And, I think that, we all like really collectively do that, including everyone within the within the YouTube chat. It's 11:33 right now. I don't know, I'm always like looking at those numbers, but it's like it's a cool angel number time. But anyway, yeah, like I feel like we're all kind of collectively holding this container, and even though like, like you're the one who's like, um, you know, you're the one who has created this space, Brendon, and everything. I think it's like really important to acknowledge, that everyone within this call, like, on Zoom, and everyone within the YouTube chat who has like, joined and has at any point during this like, broadcast has like, spread their energy and like, like created the supportive environment, that this is in the safe space for sharing. And it's always such a beautiful thing to be a part of and to participate in. So, like I thank you for creating that. And I thank each and every single one of you for helping to, co-create this, beautiful synergy circle dynamic that it always is. And yeah, so I wanted to actually touch upon just briefly the kind of idea of the love languages and how it actually relates, I think with like outside of the relationship, the romantic relationship dynamic. And, with my dad, for example, like, it's like, I like recognize that, like his like love language, like, for me in a lot of ways is like when he like goes out of his way to buy me food and stuff like that, or when he like will, because like he's like a chef and everything. And also like how the other example too is with like him like wanting to work on my car like with me and stuff like that, because his dad owned like an auto body shop, so it was kind of like that was like his relationship with his dad and stuff like that. So it's kind of like being able to bring that, like me being able to see and understand that that is like his way of trying to make and reach out and form that connection with me, and not kind of just rejecting it like because like I just don't really want his help with that, like because of whatever kind of resentment that I still carry like within me. So it's like being able to see, I think like and understand like what people's like kind of love languages are, like is really like a beautiful thing to be able to see, because like it's like when we can see that, we can kind of like go out of our way to like really like show up and be present like when they, and to receive what they're giving, and not just kind of like put up that block, that barrier, because like like it's like allowing that love in that they're really trying to give to us that we may not really be acknowledging. So it's like a really important, I feel like thing to acknowledge and bring up. But yeah, I mean that's kind of like all I really wanted to say in the comment about that. But, other than that, this was such a great conversation. I think we covered so many areas about healthy relationships, and like all of these things, like about like love and how it extends far beyond just like a simple romantic, simple kind of like how it's displayed. I feel like within popular culture and stuff like that, we really expanded and got like really deep into these concepts. And it's so important, I feel like, to be having these discussions, because like like the way it is kind of like portrayed within our culture is just kind of like like it is this hookup culture where it is just kind of really focused on the physical aspect of sex, and it's not like kind of like we know it's not like really brought up like a lot of these like psychological components and like spiritual components, which are like the other components within relationships and stuff like that. They're very much so important to be brought up and discussed, because those are like that is what the real depth is. Like it's beyond the physical, it's more than that always. And it's like it always gets down to the underlying energetic situation that is playing out on that deeper level. So yeah, like I thank you again for being a part, for allowing me to be a part of this discussion, and I'm happy that I could share some of my insight and perspectives. And I honor and see everyone for all they are, and all that they've contributed, and all of their beautiful light. So yeah, sending my love to each and every single one of you, and yeah, wishing you a wonderful night.
Awesome. Thank you again, Kris, as always. And yeah, again, just super grateful for everybody just being here. This has been a great conversation. Went a little bit longer than what was originally anticipated, but again, it was all said with love. It was all said with intention. And yeah, just thank you so much, everybody in the YouTube chat, for being a part of the discussion as well. So again, just closing thoughts for anybody here. So for anybody else who wants to jump in, just go ahead and put your hand up and we'll pass it over to you in a second. So anybody want to jump in? Felicia? Yeah. Okay, Felicia, I'll pass it over to you. Closing thoughts, go ahead.
Just wanted to give a little gratitude and thought of how I kind of touched on this earlier, that of course, first time I had gotten a join discussion in this way in a couple years, and I was all just having some anxiety and nervous about this, that, the other thing, chronic situational and so on. And then go figure, and my this whole the whole group here, sorry, I'm stuttering a bit there, but the whole group just kind of, I'm losing my words here. I know my thought, but I'm not actually losing the train of thought as before. Just helped, the whole group has helped kind of with all of that. And I was, of course, once again able to talk about many things. Oh, I went back in the chat and people were saying I was well spoken when I thought I was not saying things like really that understandably. And oh man, I started saying this thinking I could be a little more clear. I apologize, y'all. But just lots of gratitude for everybody. And I don't know. I don't know how to word the rest of it. I'm just gonna shoot gratitude at everyone and close it at that.
Awesome. Gratitude fully received. Thank you, Felicia. Beautiful. All right. Okay. Again, just passing the talking stick around to anybody else, just sharing some closing thoughts, gratitude before we conclude the broadcast. Go ahead. Anybody? Ashley, Carly, Dani, or Erica. It's totally optional. I mean, I know you guys, your gratitude is felt regardless, but if you guys have any closing thoughts, Ashley, pass it over to you. Go ahead.
No closing thoughts, really. Just want to share my gratitude for everyone sharing their vulnerable stories. Because obviously, this is a topic that can really delve into that. Maybe there's still some pain and healing that is felt, but you using your voice and sharing it here with all of us is very much appreciated and very much seen. So I just want to share that gratitude and send love to you all.
Awesome. Thank you as well, Ashley, for being here, and for everybody here just holding space together. This has been a great practice. Erica, passing it over to you for any closing thoughts. Go ahead.
I just had my hands up because I was sending love to everybody.
Oh, okay. Did you want to? And gratitude.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I'm continuing to heal. It's all gonna be fine. Yep. You're welcome.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Carly or Dani? Carly? Yeah. Okay. Carly, passing it over to you. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Brendon for facilitating this conversation and for letting me join the group. This is my first synergy meeting, and I was pretty nervous about it, but I feel like I'm really glad that I participated and was able to talk to you all about this conversation, and I'm grateful for you all to listen and to hear your stories as well. So thank you, and thank you for creating this community for all of us to be together and to share our thoughts and feelings about topics that are really important for us as a collective. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you as well, Carly. Beautiful. Yeah, and thank you again. Bonus points to all the new people who were a part of this broadcast for taking that step. Good job, everyone. You've officially gained some experience points and level upped. So wonderful. All right, Dani, I know you're kind of multitasking, but if you wanted a closing thought, yeah, go ahead, Dani, when you're ready.
Again, just kind of reiterating what everybody else has said. I'm very grateful to be able to talk to you guys, other people who are, you know, as you put it, conscious creators. I'm the only person in my life currently who has gone through the journey that I'm currently going through. So I feel very grateful to be surrounded by fellow people who are on the same path of self-growth and who are, you know, advocating for the same things that I want to advocate for. So thank you, Brendon, especially for holding this space. Love you guys.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you, Dani. Beautiful. All right. Okay. So with that said, we're going to get into the meditation in a second. There's just one other thing I'll mention, and just kind of like my own closing thoughts and my own gratitude, where again, you know, like I think when it comes to the collective relationship, like when it comes to relationships within the collective, we all have a role to play. And I think a big part of that role is also just kind of like looking ahead to the future by generational standards, by being able to understand that, you know, things that we recognize today as being problems within kind of the patterns of how people are approaching relationships, and just kind of like, you know, it has to do a lot with the knowledge of self, and I think the more that people begin to know thyself in a very literal way, the more they'll begin to understand their worth. And then I think when they understand their worth, they'll begin to understand how that impacts the dynamics with their relationship. Because I think a lot of and again, you know, I'm always thinking about, you know, the younger generations and stuff like that, and I look at them and I think in a lot of ways, they're just kind of being like programmed into this idea where they're very confused about their worth. And sometimes for them, they think that their worth is defined by others admiring them, you know, and that's where you get people where the girls are trying to be popular and the guys are trying to be suave in kind of like a bro way sort of thing. And it's the recognition that they receive and the attention that they get that kind of like helps them understand who they are. But I think it's up to us as individual creators and leaders and influencers for the future generations to help inspire people and remind them of their worth within their own heart first and foremost. And that's not something that they need to have someone else validate. And once they kind of like begin to really understand this and really begin to practice this art of self-love and really understand their worthiness and how worthy they are of love, then I think naturally over time, again, you know, the generations will begin to reflect that through the dynamics that we'll see within culture. And so I appreciate everybody helping plant the seeds of that through our everyday actions, through the content we're creating, because I think we're seeing it. We're literally seeing this shift in you know, in the younger generations, and I think it's going to continue to shift, and I hope it does, you know, that way. So what we're acknowledging as you know, the patterns of trauma and everything like that, will begin to break those patterns, we'll begin to break those cycles. And I hold place in my heart for future generations where, you know, young men and women can still get to learn through the experience, but again, the dynamics will be much more holistic, much more mindful, and really just allow them to just receive the love that they are worthy of. And I wish that for each and every single one of us through. So kudos to each and every single one of us, and I say that on a collective scale, for going through the hard lessons, but ultimately those lessons have helped lead us back to the wisdom of our own heart. And I think that wisdom is a very powerful gift that each and every single one of us are here to help share with the world. So I thank everyone again for being here and for helping share the collective lessons of relationships and love. So beautiful. With that said, let's get into a closing meditation. So for everybody here, this is just gonna be a very quick one. We kind of do this at the end of each little synergy circle. So just taking a moment here. When you're ready, you can sit, you can stand, you can do whatever you need to do. When you're ready, gently close your eyes. You can roll your shoulders, straighten up your spine, relax your face. And as you listen to my voice, gently bringing awareness to your breath. And as you breathe here, just bringing ourselves back to that visualization of all of us just sitting in a circle together. And again, you can imagine us like out in the middle of a field or in a yoga studio, wherever. And just take a moment here to look each person around, all around the circle, and really just send them gratitude. Just acknowledge them. Just really take a moment here to smile at their soul. And as we are in this space, just allowing yourself to receive this gift of gratitude from all the other people here in this broadcast. And gently, you can put your hands on your heart and really just feeling the love of this family, of this tribe, and of this story that we are weaving together. From here, just imagining all of us gently just standing up and kind of walking together, and slowly just, if you wish to imagine, all just joining in a nice big group hug, very gentle, very gentle. And as we're in this group hug, just add a very gentle sway to your body, just from like left to right or back forth, just a very gentle sway. And this sway is literally just like a reflection of the sway that happens by all of us hugging in this group circle together. And so as you're in this space, I'm going to stop talking for a moment and just feel the love. Just feel this present moment. And just allow yourself to just be in this space of gratitude. So I'm going to stop talking here and just breathe just for a few moments. As you feel that collective rhythm of our sway, take a moment here to speak words to all the other people who are here, who are tuned into this broadcast. What do you have to say to them in this moment? And as you're in this space, just allow yourself to hear anything being said back to you and just receive any messages through your heart in this moment. Beautiful. And so as we conclude this meditation, you can physically hug yourself. You can wrap your arms around you if you want. Just add a little bit of a sway and you can just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Beautiful. And from here, gently just imagine the hug slowly releasing from the group. And from here, just take another moment to just thank everyone within your heart. And slowly we'll bring awareness back to your physical body, wiggling your toes, wiggling your fingers, and gently return your awareness to the space around you. Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Good job, everyone. That was a beautiful synergy circle. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of it. We'll wrap up this broadcast in the next minute. So for those of you in the YouTube chat, thank you so much for joining in. For those of you listening into the future, thank you as well. Please feel free to leave your comments, share this with your friends. Join us again on Thursday, 8 p.m. EST for our next podcast next week. You'll find out what the topic will be earlier in the week. Thank you again to our Patreon supporters. Thank you. We actually did get a new Patreon sign up during the broadcast. Thank you to Melanie for signing up on Patreon. So we're currently at 182. So special thank you to Melanie as well. And a reminder, if you've enjoyed this broadcast and you're thinking, hey, I'd love to be on air for a future one, then definitely look into our Patreon to learn more about becoming a leading member within our community, where you can join our private community space to join on air for these broadcasts, join our team collaboration periods, and join into the additional private chat and get discounts for the item shop and more. So with that said, I remind everyone to please be sure to connect to to the links of all the creators in this broadcast. They are in the YouTube info, so make sure you refresh the page and find that info, and we'll post it into the comments as well. And even feel free to send them a message and be like, yo, I saw you on the podcast, and send them some love, and keep connected and keep supporting. And again, for anybody here who hasn't yet, you're welcome to join on air you're welcome to join our team chat, our Discord chat server, and the link for that is in the info as well for YouTube. So with that said, we are going to conclude this broadcast, and I just send everyone so much love, and just reminding you to keep remembering that the most important relationship is the one with yourself and the one with the universe, and through that relationship, may you continue to deepen your relationship with others as well. So for everybody here, gently go ahead and join me in unmuting your microphones, and we'll send some love to all the people here as we conclude this broadcast. So for everybody here, go ahead, make some noise, send some love. We love you guys. Beautiful. Go ahead, a little bit more. Awesome. All right. Thank you again, everyone, so much. As always, keep it shifty, and we will see you in the future. Peace and wholeness. Special thank you to Dani Leonardo, whose music is featured at the beginning and end of this podcast. Be sure to check out more of Dani's work in the YouTube info below. Thank you, Dani.